Starting another live feed here. Today we're going to be talking to Mark Walters. This is going to be awesome. I'm just going to wait for him to enter the chat here. Okay, I see you there, Mark. I'll invite you now that you're in and see if that helps. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I think this will work. Request. Make sure my volume's up here too. Oh, hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
It's good. It's good. Not bad. Not bad. Just life, trying to get stuff done at the shop today, and then a little bit of time off, and similar stuff.
Perfect. So I'll give you a little intro here. This is Mark Walters. You're from Arizona, right? What part of Arizona are you from?
Yeah, I live in Scottsdale, and my studio's in Tempe.
Okay. And you've been tattooing, 35 years?
I think 36 years this year, yeah.
Nice one.
Yeah, not bad. Seems like a whole lifetime ago, yeah?
Very cool, man. So let's take it way back to the beginning. How long have you been an artist? How long have you been making artwork?
God, I've been into art for as long as I can even remember. I mean, my mom is a great artist. My sister is an amazing artist. Like, everybody is very artistic in my family. And as far as back as I can even remember, I would not only draw in class, like I would draw, doodle during class while everyone else made notes and stuff. But not only that, like I always wrote a lot. Also wrote a lot of like poetry and music, and was just really artistic in nature,
Very cool.
Yeah.
All of those things are, a lot of people think, art is only drawing something nice or painting something, but really I find that the true artists have been just unstoppable from the beginning, and like you, they've been doing more than just drawing. It's everything, isn't it? It's telling stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it works across the board for different people. Some people are just crazy, like musically inclined, and they just find their outlet. You know what I mean? And their creativity comes out in whatever they think, whatever they do. Like, some people use sports as their creativity. Some people use art, painting, drawing, whatever. Some people are music, like we said. Like, it's really, really popular. I see a lot of tattooers and stuff like translating over music and tattooing and things of that nature, So I definitely think, it's definitely the art part of it kind of translates across any sort of medium,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of the exception to the rule of jack of all trades, master of none, because the arts is such a big body of stuff that they kind of feed into each other if you get good at one thing. Like, maybe somebody who's good at sculpting who gets into drawing, suddenly they have a better understanding of 3 dimensions, so their drawing translates that way, or something like that. I truly believe all this stuff feeds into each other.
Yeah, and you can like slip and slide on that scale, Like, I get into things. Jiu-jitsu for me is an art form, as you know, because you're a martial artist yourself, and like I get into this thing where my mind gets super hyper vigilant, hyper fixed on jiu-jitsu for a while, really, really intense into it, and then I kind of slide out of the tattooing. My tattooing just becomes like second nature, and I just get really hyper focused on jiu-jitsu and that, and then I slide right back into the tattoo, and I go away from the jiu-jitsu, and I go into the skating a little bit more, and then I go back, and it's that slippery slope, As an artist, my mind is always creating something in different forms.
Yeah, I think that's really healthy to do,
Yeah, I think you keep all that stuff moving, otherwise you just get really, maybe not for everybody, but I think as yourself being such a great artist and an unreal tattooer, I think we know, like, you constantly just need to keep pushing it and growing it. And if you get stagnant, you just feel like an angst and like kind of like on edge. And if I don't do jujitsu, or if I don't go skate, or if I only tattoo, I feel like wound up in myself. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. I think this is why some people burn out or they plateau, is because they've only focused on one thing and they got good at that one thing, but now they're kind of over it and they're just like, there's no soul left in that one thing. So I think it's important to have other mediums.
I just saw somebody the other day told me that somebody was booked for like 5 years and that's all they do. They just tattoo and they're booked for like 5 years and they're so booked and stuff. And I was like, wow, how amazing for them. That's great. But fuck, like, what about your life? Like you don't do anything else? Like, I love jujitsu. I love to skate. I love to tattoo. Don't get me wrong. It's my passion, but I love to design homes and I love design and architecture and all of it. So you got to make that room, you know?
For sure, man. Speaking of rewinding, let's go back to the 80s when you were sponsored by Vision Streetwear and what was the other brand?
Gullwing Trucks.
Oh, Gullwing Trucks, sweet.
Yeah, that's man, it seems like a whole nother lifetime ago. Yeah, when I had some good knees and a body that worked really well. Well, you know, I mean, skating, as you know, you're a skater. Like it's another outlet. It's another creativity. I started skateboarding. Ironically, I'm from England. I was in boarding school when I was really young, and one of the kids at my boarding school, I think I was like 6, 7, and he had a skateboard, and I was just, as soon as I rode that thing the first time, I was literally fucking glued to it. Like I wouldn't let him have it back. I would skate it all the time. Like it had like not wooden wheels, but like hard wheels. And I just couldn't get away from that. It just, that silly wooden toy, you know, it's just like, but it's so addicting. And then I got one and I had one in England and on Exeat, which is our vacation, I would skate and I would just cruise around on my skateboard, like the little mini thin boards, the old 70s boards, you know? Yeah. And then when we moved to America, my family moved to America and I came here to join that. I moved with them and I just started skating more and more. I was kind of punk rock. I was a punk rocker. So I was kind of punk rock and skateboarding were hand in hand. It was all rebellious, like, you know, like I was kind of a rebellious teenager at that time. And I just didn't really I felt like skateboarding was really my outlet. And that's kind of how it felt to me to go skating. I just kind of forgot the world, which is kind of how jiu-jitsu is to me now, well, in my 50s. But I just kind of forgot all the other noise and all the other stuff. And I would write and draw and do all that. But when I would go skating, man, I would leave it early in the morning with my friends. And Arizona in the 80s was a hub of skateboarding. It was insane. I mean, we had Kevin Staub and all these pros would come here. And we had one of the best ramps that anybody ever skated. It was called the Perfect Ramp. It was called Patty Sellers Ramp. And it was huge. I mean, well, I was little, but it seemed huge. I mean, I guess now it's small compared to like modern day ramps, but it was huge at the time. But we had all these pros and I mean, that's all I would do was skate. I mean, I would literally go to school and skate and that's it. And yeah, I got sponsored, picked up on that. It was like a flow sponsorship, which was they would just flow products to me and I would skate and enter contests and got better and got injured and you know, like as you know, it's not always the fun part of it, you know. But yeah, I mean, the 80s skate era for me was like the 90s tattoo era for me. Like it was just so cool. It was the best era. Like Tony Hawk and Hosoi and all those guys, the Bones Brigade, and like just that whole era was so like just cool. It was just so cool. Vans were cool and checkers were cool. And, you know, like it was just such the best. For me, I just think it was the best era. And people precursor to me probably thought the 70s was a better era. You know what I mean? But that's the oldest I can remember.
Right. And that was the same. Was that the same era of the N Men in Arizona? Were the N Men around, or
No,
some group of skaters?
N?
I think that's what they're called. I was just watching. Yeah, N Men or something like that. Some group.
I think, or it was that on the AZPX thing.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was before me.
Okay. That makes sense then. Yeah.
70s, because there was a couple of skate parks and there was Donnie Ho and all these skaters, and there was a group of guys. Like I got here in the 80s and that's when I started skating here. But there was a whole crew of like Rob Locker and all these guys. Like I'm part of this crew, this organization now, AZPX, and it was part of it. AZPX was just a group of guys, and they all skated together during the 80s and 70s and stuff. And those guys all still skate together. I still skate with those guys now in the 50s, which is cool. But it was like Donnie Ho and Rob Locker and all these other guys, and they all skated Dead Cat Pool and all these different like things that they all skated together. Different skate park. There was a skate park, and they all skated together. So I think that was that area, which was one generation, not generation, but like a couple of years prior to the 80s, I think.
Okay, you mentioned that Dead Cat Pool. That was like that was a famous pool in the Arizona area, right?
Everybody skated Dead Cat, man. Like JFA, like if you know JFA, which is like the band, you know, Brian Brennan in the 80s and 90s and everything. JFA was probably one of the biggest skate bands, and Brian was in Arizona, and we would all skate with Brian and Bam and all the guys, and it was just cool, and everybody skated Dead Cat and stuff. I only got to skate it one time, but it was around forever, and people skated it constantly. It was super cool.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah, it was super skatable, really cool.
Very cool, man. I was going to ask you. I was just thinking. Sorry, I had a little blank out moment there.
Canada by you that you can go skate besides the skate parks, like ramps and pools and stuff?
Canada has a few skate spots and a couple of DIYs, but the Vancouver area is full of rain. Like it rains a lot here, so you know, it's made some pretty resilient skaters who will skate rain or shine.
Yeah.
And you know, or it'll make them go into the underground parking lots and you know, maybe do a little freestyle in the bad season in their garage or something like that, right?
When I went to London, I went to London for vacation, and Vision was there, and I was sponsored by Vision at the time, and I did a skate demo. And at the Thames River, which is like the big river in the middle of London, you know, there's some banks that are under the thing, so you can skate them all the time. And there was a big skate demo, and then we skated a bunch of ramps there, and they're all metal, whereas in Arizona they're all wood. So like I think in all the places where they rain a lot and they just build their ramps metal, so they just are good, you know.
Yeah, we've got a lot of like just concrete kind of DIY spots and things like that too. Or there's one spot, the closest thing we have to an indoor is under a bridge. It's in a tunnel. It's called Leaside.
Oh yeah. I've seen that. I've seen it.
It's kind of like Burnside.
Like Burnside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super DIY, crazy like stuff all over.
Yeah, tons of graffiti everywhere and stuff like that, and they've built up a really tall section.
Yeah,
and
big
stuff like that.
All the way up all the way up the columns and stuff.
Yeah, exactly, and a lot of DIY pool coping and stuff like that. You know, the beer can pool coping and all that.
Yeah, so cool to listen to that.
Yeah,
like just skate. Yeah.
Did you get into any graphics in those years at all when you were being sponsored, like when you were being floated
like
and stuff?
Drawing graphics?
Yeah, for the skate industry.
I used to draw my own boards. Like I used to get some blanks and I just used to draw on them. And that era in the 80s was a lot of pens and like drawing on your grip tape. So
Oh yeah.
you remember that? Like, I don't know if you're around for that, but that's like Gons started it. Like Gons and Jesse Martinez and those guys, like they all started, and Nadas Kappas and all those guys, they started like drawing on their grip tape and writing things. So I got big into that, and I would like draw. I would try and get blanks and just decks that were just not finished, and I would just draw my own stuff on them. A lot of the time I would just get vision decks from people I knew and all the pros that I knew, and I would just be like, hey, can you flow some stuff over this way, you know?
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, you mentioned Gons and all those guys, and like I noticed a lot of those really creative skaters were very artistic in other ways too, you know, and even martial artists for that matter. Is like the amount of them that paint in their spare time and stuff like that is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's super wild. Like I mean, speaking of Gons, like, I mean, he was just beyond, like, in every aspect. I mean, his artwork, his skating, he was a vert skater, the most insane street skater. So was Nadas. Like, those guys just were so creative, you know, all of them.
Yeah. And they were living pieces of art too. They had this personality, and they had, you know, like same with punk rock, you know, it'd be like the front man looked a certain way, and you wanted to hear what they had to say about stuff.
Oh yeah.
It was like, it's kind of missing nowadays, it seems like, from tattooing and from skateboarding in a way, you know. There's still a few, but
like I kind of feel like everything across the board has been taken in that aspect from skateboarding. Like, I feel like that part of skateboarding, punk rock, skateboarding, tattooing, like, is also, like, we always used to have those skateboarding is not a crime stickers, because you get thrown out of everywhere, and everyone thought you were such an asshole because you're skating and you were just some loser, and you know what I mean? And now look at like Tony Hawk and all that. I mean, it's sort of different, but all the new pros and stuff are just massive, and just like tattooing now is just mainstream, massive, huge business, you know?
Yeah, stadium events and Olympic games and things now, you know?
I think I like all that stuff a little bit better, especially in the tattoo business also, when everything was a little bit more piratey.
Yeah, a little more underground, a little more like a club you had to sort of get accepted into in a way, right?
Yeah, and like there was gatekeepers, you know, that like you wanted to learn something, like you went to a ramp and somebody was doing a trick, and I'd sit there and be like, man, how's he doing it? And you'd ask him a million times and he just wouldn't show you, and then he'd like give you the tips of how to do it, and then you like would pull it off, and it was like, the holy grail, I made it. Same with tattooing, right? Like somebody shows you something and you're like, man, how are you getting that? Like, how are you making that gray? How are you making that look like that? And then somebody gives you some like secret thing that they've mixed or washed or done, and you're like, okay, I get it. Just made it all easier, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny too, because like I've noticed, like, you know, I like the whole gatekeeping thing in some ways too, because it kept it a little more underground. But one thing I noticed was that the people who were really good and shared information, they kept getting new information given back to them. And I've noticed in skateboarding too, the ones who are really excited about it and share their tricks with people, and you know, but I think skateboarding still has like, oh, I'm not going to show this video part yet because that's for my part I'm going to drop or whatever. So there's still a bit of the secrets there, right?
I think it's kind of like tattoo, like skateboarding. Like I remember skating with guys like Steve Alba when I went to Pipeline back in the 80s, and skating Pipeline in Del Mar and seeing like, God, like just crazy pros, Hosoi and Caballero and Lance Mountain McGill and just watching them, and just, they were approachable because they were young kids like me. Like I was probably 15, 16. They were probably like 18. And so I was just this kid, but they were all approachable. They weren't, and you could ask them. I mean, you weren't going to be able to do their tricks anyway, but you know, like I remember seeing Steve Salba at Pipeline and watching him do this line through the full pipe and then the deep end of this bowl on the back. And like, I just couldn't get the carve around that. I just asked him, like, where are you pumping to get that? And he was just a plus. He just blurted out so much shit of information. I couldn't even process it, and then just kept trying it. And it didn't really matter because he was so good at it that I just couldn't do it anyway. So it was just, those guys, although they just kept getting better, they were fine with giving information because you just weren't good enough to keep up anyway. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think too, a part of it might have even been a slightly selfish reason. They knew that if they shared something, one day somebody would share something with them. But at that level, those guys can just see something and be like, "Oh, I'm taking that," you know.
So yeah, I mean, so you skate quite often, I see, and you see something, you know how it is as a skater. You see something and you go, "Man, I just want to do this," and then you try it once and you go, "Nah, that's not it." It's like somebody can come up and go, "Hey, how are you doing that?" And you're like, I don't know. It's just like I feel it. Like I know the feeling of what it's supposed to look like, and that's how I do it. Like when I have apprentice, like we've had a lot of apprentices at the shop over the past 30-something years, very successful. And when they would be like, when you're packing in color and you're getting it to do that and you're moving quick and it, like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, oh man, like it's so hard to like be like, well, it's all little oval circles with a little push, but it's like a feeling, right? Like it's just that feeling you get that's second nature to just the movement, and you just get so used to doing it that the explanation doesn't even translate well to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then they try it and you're like, fucking no, that's wrong. And they're like,
yeah,
doing what you showed me. And you're like, no, it's wrong. Like, but in your head, you can feel what you're doing.
Flow state.
Yeah. The flow state. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay. How did you go from skateboarding to tattooing?
Man, I was skating a lot. And I had a really good friend. His name was Evan Thompson. Rest in peace. He passed away, but he was kind of my sidekick. He would go to all the ramps with me. He knew everybody. He wasn't a skater, but he was like that guy in the industry that knew everybody. Like he literally knew. He was a punk rocker. He was cool guy. Like knew everybody, loved everybody, loved him. He was in the skate scene. So I didn't know. I came from a pretty strict boarding school. I came to America. Like I grew up in England, grew up in Hong Kong, and I was not from a family of that was around tattooing or anything. It was not something even in the aspect of what I would have thought of. And I didn't even know people had tattoos. I never was interested in them. I didn't grow up seeing them. I saw them on like people in Hong Kong, like you would see when I was in Hong Kong, the sailors had them and it was down by the docks, and you'd see tattoo shops down by the docks and stuff, you know? But it was always that like stories about like Popeye and his tattoo and stuff like that. It was nothing that I would be into, you know? But when I was hanging out with Evan, I would drive and he didn't have a car, and he was like, hey man, one day after we were skating, I went skating, he hung out with me. He goes, can you take me to the tattoo shop? And I was like, yeah. So I went with him, and I was just hanging out there while he was getting tattooed. And I happened to grab this little piece of paper and I was doodling, and the guy was like, I like did this little skull and cross. I just copied a little piece of flash on the wall, you know, and I just kind of freehanded it, and I changed it a little bit, and I put a little bandana on it and stuff. And his was like a skull and crossbones, like with a heart and stuff. And I put a bandana, and I put a little cigarette hanging out of his mouth because I smoked a lot and stuff. And the guy, JC, was like, man, you just drew that? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, wow, it's a really good artist. And I was like, thanks. And then just kind of left it. And like Evan would go back to get tattooed, and then I went back with him a couple of times and was like, man, this is pretty cool. Like start seeing his tattoos. They were pretty like uninspiring back then, you know, like the guy wasn't the best tattooer, but I didn't know. I just saw tattoos, you know, and I just started like being more and more intrigued by not the tattooing in itself, but the artwork that he was getting and the translation between what this guy was doing. The guy who was tattooing was like this big biker with a gun on his side and all this stuff. And I was like, that guy's mean, you know, like this business is mean, you know? And Evan, you looked like he was in pain. And I was like, that looks terrible. That looks just horrible. So one day he was like, you should get one. And I was like, no, not me, you know? And then he talked me into this little tiny thing on my hip, and JC gave it to me, and it was just a horrific experience. It was just terrible. He actually is a funny story. Like he started tattooing me and like single needle, and he had no gloves on, and he had a gun in his holster, and he was tattooing me, and he pulled like the first line. I jumped really bad. You know, I was like 17, I think. And then he pulled the second line. I jumped again, and he's like, if you jump again, I'm just going to stab you. And I was like, fuck. And now I'm sweating, and Evan's talking to me, and I jumped again, and he literally just took his tattoo machine and just made a fist and just fucking stabbed me. Like,
holy fuck.
He buried the tip of his tube like that deep into my hip. Everyone at my shop cracks up at that story. He like buried it in, like it was these two tiny little masks, like Smile Now, Cry Later masks. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
And just right in the middle of them, he just buried the tube, like, and it was one of those small, like the small, tiny little finger-sized knurled tube with a long tip.
Oh yeah.
And he just buried it into my thigh, like just above my thigh on my hip, and I just was like, oh my! I just didn't move. I let him finish it, and then that was it for me. And then Evan ended up going to a different shop, and which was Peter Tattoo, which I'm sure you know the history of Peter Tattoo, Peter Polis and Peter Tattoo. It's very, in America, it's very big, like worldwide. But he started getting tattooed there, and I started going down there and hanging out quite a bit, and going there on my own and becoming quite really friendly with Ernie Gosnell, who was my mentor, and Ernie and Frank and Larry. And I would just hang out and draw all day there. And I just would spend my day there and draw and Ernie and smoke cigarettes, and we'd go out at night, and then just gradually just started learning what like I would help those guys at night. Like they would give me $10 to like make mags weren't even around then, 4 flats and 6 flats. And I would just lay out 4 flats and just tack everything together for them, you know? And then just kind of went down that road and just ended up apprenticing from there. And that was at Peter Tattoo in, I think it was like 88, yeah. Right after I graduated high school.
Very cool. What kind of machines were those guys? Do you remember what kind of machines those guys had back then?
All using like Spalding cutbacks. Just the Spalding. It was all just the Spalding stuff. And I think some people at that time had some Dennis Dwyer aluminum machines that sounded like chainsaws at the time. They were like, because they were aluminum, you know?
Oh yeah.
And there was like the nail. Did you ever see that? It was like a nail and a nail. It was just old school. Yeah. Dennis Dwyer had them from Tucson, but yeah, most of it was all Spalding with like the big Spalding power unit with the rheostat and
the toaster looking
toaster.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Big red light.
I just missed the no gloves thing by like very short period, you know?
Good.
Exactly. At least I got the autoclaving and all the clean stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I started in the 90s, so they hadn't moved to nitrile gloves yet. It was all latex gloves still, but with all the powder all over your hands and shit.
I got a really bad allergy I got really sick. I got a bad allergy because of that, because of the latex. A lot of people, I heard later on down the line that a lot of people actually didn't fare well with, because latex, you wear it all the time, all the time, all the time. You can like grow an allergy to it. But yeah, those latex, thin latex. And I always tell the story, and I have a whole gallery of photos that I kept. And I show the guys at the shop, like we used to just throw that towel over our knee, and you know, there was no armrest. You just rest somebody's arm on your leg, you know, and just tattoo them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And
a different time.
going at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a different lifestyle. It's just a different, it's so hard to explain to someone. I mean, you've been there, like, you know, the years of that. It's just a different dynamics of tattooing, different era, the whole thing is completely different, you know? And I believe that I really appreciate the apprenticeship. My apprenticeship was hard, and it was a true old school, real apprenticeship. And I think it molded me into the tattooer that I am today. I've been tattooing for a long time. My shop's been around for 32 years. Like, we've had a lot of people come and go over the years, and I run a pretty strict shop, like with pretty strict rules and the things that I believe in. And I believe that that comes from the way I was brought up at Peter Tattoo. And Peter was a hard-nosed guy. I didn't work for Peter. He had just been killed before I got there, but his wife, Diane, run the shop. And that Peter Tattoo Association was pretty hardcore, man. Like they ran a really tight ship, and that filtered down to the way I run my, I really believe that's how I run my shop now, because of that upbringing in the industry in that way, you know?
Yeah, and I think nowadays there's a lot of new tattooers that really frown upon the old ways, partly because it sounded too tough for them, and they wouldn't put up with that, or whatever it might be. Things are a little easier now as far as people being friendlier and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot to be said for having been around some of these tough biker types that you know, you wouldn't want to run into in a dark alley, because when you made them happy, that really felt good, and you really felt like you'd accomplished something, and you got a thick skin in the end. And you know,
I wouldn't dare, I tell you what, like, I wouldn't dare have talked back as an apprentice at that shop. Like, I mean, Ernie was like a mentor to me. He was great. Larry and Ernie, they were all great. I wouldn't dare have talked back to the guys. And when I got done with my apprenticeship, I wouldn't dare have left and worked at another shop in any vicinity close to that, because they would have cut my hands off, I think. Or like, I don't know, like I was dead scared of it. And in this generation, I've had multiple apprentices that get a couple months in and are like, fuck you, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? I'm like, there's the door, go, before you and I end up in the parking lot. Like, it's just, I just can't fathom and put my head around the way people treat their mentors, or the way that people are. And everybody has a different view on how they do it. Like, now, I think during COVID, people bought a lot of machines, they bought stuff, and they learned how to tattoo. And there's great self-taught people. Congratulations. Great. Like, good for you. You have a private studio. Like, I mean, different story. You have a private studio. You're ahead of the game. You've been tattooing a long time. With these guys who are just come up, brand new, bought a thing, didn't do an apprenticeship, or maybe they did do an apprenticeship, or their apprenticeship consisted of a guy who learned by somebody else for like 6 months and then tattoos, and now he's been tattooing for a year, and now he's teaching his buddy, and he's calling it an apprenticeship. It's like, I just have a belief from, I think, the way I was raised in it, that like 5 to 10 years, like, before you can be teaching anybody anything, you just don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of people think they know, because they watch a lot of tutorials, and like their Instagram they got a lot of feedback on their Instagram, and they got a lot of followers, and they're like, oh, I know all this stuff. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, you really don't, though.
Yeah, and that's why we get trends like micro tattooing and color portraits with no contrast, and things that don't age well.
It's just such a weird thing, right? To see somebody and bring their setup to the shop. Like when I hire people now, they bring their setup and they have like 2 boxes of needles, and they're like, "This is my liner and shader," and I'm like, "Fuck, dude, I got like 30 boxes of needles. Like I don't even, you know what I mean? Like it's just so weird. Like you line, shade, whip it, and you're done. Like no mag. Like you get the same effect with the mag, smoother. And I get that people are into that, and you know, people were into Taz's and tramp stamps too at one time. And for me, look, I'm going to sound like a real jerk for a lot of people that watch this or who sees it, but I just prefer that fine line stuff just take a trip off out of it with the Taz's and other tramp stamps, and we just move on.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is they don't want to hear it from the old schoolers who have seen the stuff turn into blurry blobs. Or they just don't care. Oh, well, it looks good now. It looks good for a photograph, so I'll take that, and who cares how it ages?
Jamie, I don't even believe they know. Like, I just don't believe they know what it's going to look like in 2 years from now. I've had people, like, I love this. I have guys who come back to my shop. I have some pictures on my Instagram of guys who I tattooed 30 years ago. I had just had a guy come in with a heart with his wife's name on it. He came in. It's 30, I think it's like 31 years old or something. And I literally have the photo for the day he was there. And I took the photo, and the tattoo, it's got all the black in it. The line work is solid. The color's all there, and it's still there. The name is still there. They're still together. It's still held up. And those are the tattoos I swear by. And those are the tattoos. I want to give somebody something that I don't feel like I'm ripping them off. And I feel like, look, I'm giving you a tattoo, and it's going to hold the test of time. And I feel like, I mean, you more than anybody should know the Japanese and the Asian influence stuff with the heavy saturation and the black backgrounds and all this stuff. They just hold the test of time. Traditional American, all that stuff, high contrast and heavy blacks and committing to the black and getting it laid in there. It's timeless, and we all know it works. The people who don't know it works are the fine line people who are doing it that just don't care that it doesn't work because they don't see their stuff in 2 years, that it's either gone or blown out, and it's just a mess. We see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, I always think about what Horiyoshi said. It was something like he's not interested in what a tattoo looks like 6 months even after. He's more interested in how it settled in after 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you did it right.
I think I saw Philip Liu said something similar like that too. He wants to see it down the line. Someone once told me, like, and I like to say it, I don't remember who told me, maybe maybe Ernie or somebody, but every new tattoo looks good. And they all look good. Even if they're overworked and chewed up, you can blot them off and they all look bright. What do they look like 5 years from now? That's the key, right? Like they all look good new.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's ever changing, you know, and it's not always for the better, but I mean, you just gotta kind of flow with it. I think the people who are doing the right thing and will stay doing the right thing, and they will continue to grow and do stuff that we're doing, and they not just like your style and my style, a bit traditional, the color realism with the correct realism with the heavy darker background, so it'll hold up and stuff. Those people will just continue to grow, and the other stuff eventually will just kind of fall off like we'll do. I think the bigger problem is not the tattooers doing it. I think it's other people like estheticians and stuff coming in and going, oh, well, I do eyebrows, so I'm just going to be a tattooer now. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, but
yeah, and you're right. It's just as temporary as the eyebrow ink they use. You know,
I know somebody that does eyebrow stuff, and she uses the same. She asked me, she was like, well, can I buy some black from you? And I was like, no, I'm just not interested in like adding to your thing. And she's like, but it's not even what you do. And I said, no, but I have a responsibility to the people of the tattoo world. I feel like I'm an ambassador to the tattooing, that I feel like after 30 something years, 35 years, 36 years, like I just don't feel like she wanted to, she's been tattooing with all her cosmetic tattoo makeup, like that ink that she's using. And I was like, it's just going to fade out. Like you know what I mean? Like carbon base, the black isn't there and all that kind of stuff. And she just came to me being like, hey, they keep coming back complaining it's wearing off. And I was like, why do you think that is? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, well, you're not my apprentice and I'm not here to tell you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it's actually a less stable ink, so that they're guaranteed that they got to keep coming back again.
Yeah.
And so that it doesn't stay forever and
turn into
blur out over time or whatever.
Yeah.
When did
I just saw something online the other day. I don't know if you've seen it, about some ink that's supposed to last like a year or something and then start to fade and then disappear or something.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, something to do with how stable the pigment is.
The molecular structure of the pigment breaks down and something like that.
Yeah, I heard it described like a pigment is a molecular structure, like a shape, like a dodecahedron or whatever kind of a shape.
Yeah.
And what happens is, when like red fades away, for example, or brown, and it looks like it's gone. Like I used to think it just went away and into the body and the body absorbed it. Apparently that's not the case. Apparently what happens is that molecular structure collapses over time. And that's what they're talking about when they're saying stable pigment, I guess. Stable or unstable is to do with that structure.
Yeah.
And if it collapses, it doesn't reflect back and you can't see the pigment anymore or something like that.
I don't even know that. I've never heard that, but it's super interesting. It makes sense,
And I think maybe that's what they're doing with the cosmetic stuff. They found something that doesn't keep its structure for a very long time or something like that. I don't know.
Do you think they do that for the fact that they don't overdo it, or do you think they do it for the job security of having someone continually coming back?
Probably both, hey?
Oh.
A little of both. Yeah, that's how they justify it.
Yeah. I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, same with the, I hate to say it, but same with the color portrait work in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of job security. It's like, as soon as that brown disappears, you got to come back and we got to do it again and make it look better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens. I mean, there is a whole, you see all that stuff from years ago. I remember going to Ink Slingers Ball in the 80s, a huge piece that Guy Atchison did, this whole chest piece. I watched him do it at the convention. It was so beautiful, and it was like orange and gold and this like Morphe spiral thing with green, like orby things and whatever. And then I remember seeing it not the next year, but the year after at Ink Slingers, and the guy was getting another piece and Guy was going back in and relining, and that whole thing was like, I was like, whoa, like it was like one of my first experience. And that was Guy. Like I was like, holy, like you're like the Mecca. Like I used to sit there and just like watch him and Leo Zoletta and all those guys and be like, oh my God, I'm not worthy of seeing these guys. And to see something like that and just be like, wow, that stuff's all gone. Like I wonder if the guy lives in the sun or what happened. I remember asking Guy like later on that day, I saw him over getting a drink and I was like, do you always have to go back? And he goes, I like to go back and reline everything. And I was like, yeah, interesting. I didn't feel as bad about my work.
Yeah, that's interesting, eh? Yeah, Philip said a similar thing to me. He's like, you do the whole tattoo, and then when you're done, the very last thing you do is re-outline everything so that's blacker than everything else, and it'll always be blacker.
I never did that until probably 5 or 6 years ago. I got done with this big tiger and I looked at it and I was like, God, like this thing, like it took over a year and a half to do, and everything was kind of faded in and the outline was kind of like blended in. And I was like, you know what? And I heavy black and I just relined everything and like just the base frame of the outline and the structure, and then put the eyes back in and just added some stuff. And I was like, stood back like 5 feet and I was like, oh, there it is. There you are.
Yeah. So it's good to know that these other guys are all having to do that too. I think it's just the nature of how skin ages and how tattoos hold up and all that kind of stuff.
I always just feel like it's the downside of like what you do and what I do and stuff. Like you do big stuff and it's amazing and wouldn't trade it for the world, right? But you just don't see someone for a year or a year and a half or whatnot. And you come back and you're working on a big section of a dragon and the whole other section of the field. And you're like, shit, now I got to like water this down a little bit to kind of make it a little bit lighter and a little bit softer than I typically would do it. And even the background's all like, I prefer the tattoos when they're settled after about a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years in. I just like the way they look more when they look like they're part of you. It's my favorite part. I don't even really like them when they're brand new. Like even in the first 6 months, I just think they look too new and fresh and bright. Like I've never seen, my arms were done by Kevin LeBlanc and they were screaming bright, like just unbelievable. And this is, I mean, you can see this is 30 something years later.
Wow.
And they're still look so bright. Like, look at this thing. Like, I mean,
wow.
And
you're so in bright. Arizona.
In Arizona, but I remember like for the first couple of years, they were just screamingly bright. And I actually just really, people always go, oh, you're going to touch up your arms and redo them. And I go, no, I like them the most now.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Now you're wearing tattoos. The tattoos aren't wearing you.
And it's like part of me. And I also feel like, I had my sleeves when nobody had sleeves, like except like heavily tattooed tattooers and musicians or stuff like that. And it's now you just see so many people with sleeves. It's so second nature. And I like to see that mine look older and settled, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So.
When did you get into doing the Asian style tattooing? Like, was that really early on, or was it kind of like as you learned a few things?
Well, so I was born in England and raised in Hong Kong, and so I was around Asian culture my whole upbringing, right? Like I would go back to England to boarding school, and then I would go back to Hong Kong, and I would stay. So my parents always had a lot of Chinese art and Japanese art, and we would go to we used to go to Naiba in Japan to go skiing. It's a ski resort, so we went to Naiba skiing, and there was always a lot of Japanese influence and Chinese, Asian influence stuff. Like the Foo Dogs was in front of this building that was downtown, and I was always really interested in it. And then when I was apprenticing at Peter Tattoo, Peter Polis, I don't know if you know the story of Peter or not, but he was doing like crazy Japanese stuff as a like kind of a biker guy, like, but he had all these like women, and his wife had this. When I was at Peter Tattoo, I used to look at like, I was big into like Paul Jeffries and Mike Malone and like all the old school Japanese, white Japanese guys, white guys doing, you know, all the guys at Smiling Buddha and all that stuff, like Bill Salmon and his wife and all that stuff I was so intrigued by. But then Peter's wife had these sleeves that were just settled in, and they were big black shader bars, and they were just, it was like a late 70s bodysuit on a female, but he was really, he was really an innovator in that stuff. And I was just around it a lot in the shop. Like he had it all over the shop. And so it kind of always resonated with what I grew up seeing all the time. And then Larry D, there was an artist there, Larry D, and he would draw it all the time, wizards and dragons and like all the stuff and geishas and stuff. And then the more I started tattooing, for about 10 years of tattoo, I always tried to fit some Japanese pieces into my flash. Like I would draw flash, or I would just tattoo Taz's. And for the first 5 years, all I did is just flash everything. Like we just had rows and rows with this little sticker with the price, and we just bang them out all day. And then we had a couple of pieces of flash with a dragon, and there was like a koi, and it was like the goofy old koi with the big head and the giant eye with the giant whiskers, like the 80s funky koi that was like purple and white, you know?
Yeah.
So I would try and draw a bunch of those, and they were all goofy. And then somebody came to me one time, and they were like, hey, can I get a dragon? It was my first real client, like my mind, like who came to me, that came in and asked for me. And they were like, I want to get a dragon, and I want to get it from my back. And they were like shoulders to my waist, which it's such a, like now that we bring it all down lower, it's such a weird thing, you know? And so I wish I had the picture now, and I drew this dragon and it was just funky and weird, I guess, like, and I tattooed it, and then that his friend came and ended up getting like a geisha, and then it slowly, you know how it goes. It just, like, before you know it, doing 2 or 3 pieces, and then that kind of migrated, and I started looking at like, more people, like in Arizona, we had some great Japanese tattooers, Paul Stotler, Small Paul. Roper was coming up, and Roper was slaying it.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, fucking, I don't even deserve to be tattooing. Like with Roper, who's behind me, like I was like, I don't even deserve to be doing tattoos with this guy anywhere around, who was a good friend, like a decent friend of mine. But I was just like, I'm terrible. And he's drawing just perfect finger water and perfect way, like just everything. The layouts were just spot on. And there was him, and there was Paul Stotler, and then I would go to LA a lot, and I would see Greg James, and I'd go hang out, and I would go down to like Sunset Strip, and it was Greg James and all those guys. I'd be like, fuck, like these guys are just killing it. And I just started copying a lot. Like I was just copying a lot of stuff. Like I would just I would just draw a lot of stuff, like the old tattoo magazines, and I would just get out Japanese stuff, and I would just copy it. Like the Mike Malone stuff, I would just copy. The Ed Hardy dragons, I would just copy. And then I would just, you know, back in the olden days, we had to sell tattoos. I would just sell them to people as like, hey, I found it if you let me do this. And it just kind of morphed in. And then once I had my shop, I got a lot to see. I got to see a lot of it. I got to see Brian working and Paul, and all. I was getting my arm done. It was like Paul Stotler, Roper, Kevin LeBlanc, and a couple of other people, and they were just doing some insane Japanese stuff. So I would just like try and absorb as much as I could. While Kevin was doing my arms, I would just try and absorb as much. And I don't know. Before I knew it, I was booked out a couple weeks, and then I was booked out a month, and then someone wanted a sleeve, and then it turned into like multiple sleeves and then legs, and then before I knew it, I was like, wow, I'm booked, and I just have a lot of projects. My drawing pad, I mean, obviously you come from the generation that I do. There was no iPad, so my sketchbook was just loaded with all these like studies of finger water and peonies and chrysanthemums, and they were all goofy, and how to draw koi, and the scales were wrong, and the dragon heads were wrong, and I would just constantly try, and I mean, there was just a lot of people getting just really weird stuff at that time. So I just practiced on a lot of people that I knew, friends and whatnot, and the clientele grew and grew and grew. And now I feel like I'm pretty set on what I'm doing. I have a pretty big clientele base. I'm booked out far, and I'm still nowhere where I want to be with it. But I just pick people's brains and try and learn more, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, me too, man. I think it's part of staying hungry, you know, and not plateauing is just being able to wanting to keep on improving on stuff, right? You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I just had a huge conversation the other day. Like, I love like the new tattooers, like the guys at Lighthouse in Australia, like Alex and Ryan and Camden Rosen. Like, I recently have kind of become friends, like acquaintances with Camden, and I drew this dragon for a very special client of mine, and I drew this dragon, and I just couldn't get my fucking head around it. Like, I wanted it a certain way, and Camden was doing this 100 dragons drawings thing, and every day I was looking at his dragons, and I was like, man, he's just knocking these things out so easily. Like, what am I doing wrong on this one that I'm trying to just get right? And even though I drew it, I thought it was right, and I was like, okay, I got it. And I go, hey, would you mind that I send you this? Can you just critique it for me? Just give me your input. And he goes, I fucking changed this whole section. And I was like, oh, fuck. So he like shows me this whole different layout and stuff, which worked a million times better. And then we got into this long conversation one evening and got into this whole scale conversation. And I just totally opened my mind to change. And those guys are just on a whole nother, I mean, that whole shop is ridiculous, right? All of them. Alex Rusty, Ryan Usser, like Camden, like I just the whole shop in itself, those guys are just killing it, you know?
Oh yeah.
With that style, that twisted style of Japanese, you know? But he had so much information for me, and I just redrew it that night and then messaged him the next day, and I was like, what do you think? I felt like such a dickhead because I like messaged him back, and I was like, I felt like I literally was an apprentice. I like sent him over like 2 more drawings, and I was like, what do you think? And he was like, yeah, this one's really good. I changed the foot on this one. And it was really nice to have that input, you know, from somebody that I just don't know, but I really looked up to his work. And like those guys were so nice and open. Alex, I talked a little bit about some stuff, some colors that he was using, and same kind of thing as the skateboard thing. Like those guys could gatekeep all their secrets, but they weren't. They were super kind, and they were very open and honest, and really, really nice to share information.
I think, and again, I think that's how they all got so good, because you'll notice kind of trends and I've seen it in some of these tattooers in Alberta who used to work with Paul Jeffries, and they're working like Deadly Tattoo and stuff now, and they must all, I mean, surely they all draw together and talk about certain things, and they kind of end up with a similar style, but it's this thing that works really well, and they've all helped each other, you know?
Yeah, I look at a lot of times, I look at the 3 of those guys, like Camden's or Ryan Usher's and Alex Rusty, and a lot of times like the rocks, where we used to draw rocks a little bit different, like they have their own style of doing it. Like I feel like all those guys similarly do it now, and I'm like, man, whose is that? And because it all looks so similar, but it's all just unreal, you know? And it's different. Those are the guys that I look at now, as opposed to like the European guys that have their own style, like Nick and Luke and all those guys that have their own style, which is like Roper and all that. It's a very that European style.
Yeah.
And all like Nick, all that, they have their style, and then like I feel like the Australians and all that, like they all have their style, and it's unique, and it's just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I tried to really dissect what all of that was for one time, and I was like, what is it? And I think what it is, you've got this far side of it where they've got this new school kind of thing, like what Shige was kind of doing, where everything was like maxed out and drawn really dimensionally, and but beautifully illustrated too, and pushed to the limits, and there's a little bit of tradition in there with the layout and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then of course you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is like, you know, Horiyoshi and now what the guys at Three Tides Tattoo are doing, where they've simplified. Yeah. And
more basic, simple.
Yeah. And then there's like this in-between thing where it's like, you know, like Mick Tattoo and like I think even Roper, where they're kind of over there, but they're pulling heavily from over there. And right in the middle, I really like that right in the middle place.
Yeah, I like that stuff. Your stuff, I mean, I look at your stuff before we even met, before we talked. Like I look at your stuff all the time. Like I just love the layout. Some of those layouts, like you have a dragon layout on your page that I just look at and I'm just going, fuck. Like I think it's just so cool. Like,
oh, thank you.
So
man.
Your stuff also has more to it and a lot of substance and so much going on, and it's just so interesting to look at. Like I like that. I don't always love the stuff when it's ultra basic. Like I tried to make my stuff, I don't know, like I try to draw it basic, and then I look at it and I go, nah, it's just, I feel like it's so dummy down for the way I draw that then I overdraw it, and I'm like, no, now it's too far here. And then I just kind of like finish it somewhere in the middle. Like I just kind of go, okay, I'll do this. Like I have a Namakube to do on Tuesday, and the guy's like, I want a bunch of arrows in his head and stuff. And I was like, cool. So I drew a bunch of arrows, and then I overdrew it, made the face a little too much, and he's biting his lip, and there was too much blood. And I was like, okay. And then kind of referenced back, and I was looking at some stuff, and I was like, no, that looks fine to me. And then I looked on the other direction, and I'm like, nah, it's way overdone. And then so I kind of have to open both books and both my references and just kind of go, okay, we're going to take a piece of this and a piece of this, and we're just going to morph them. And that's my drawing. And I'm going to, sometimes I just close my iPad and go, fucking done. That's it. Not looking at it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to do. And it's good to be able to identify those kinds of stylistic decisions, because it's not that one decision is better than the other. It's just at the end of the day, it's a decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a guy locally here, I'm sure you know who is. His name's Josh Carter. He's a really good friend of mine, trains jiu-jitsu. Like we're really close friends, and I try and get a lot of information from him. His style is a lot more traditional, a lot more basic, and just lots of black and big and bold, and fucking you can see it a mile away. And I'll go to his shop and I'll go hang out with him and stuff and pick his brain, and gives me lots of. I was painting a couple weeks ago, and he came over here to my house and was like, yeah, you should do this, like this, like this, and I just can't, as much as I try my hardest to morph my stuff into the way he tattoos, like I just can't get my head around it. And it works so good for him, and he's so good at it, and it looks killer. And I just look at it and go, fuck, I need to do that. And then I go, no, I'm just going to do it my way. Like, and he'll be like, I don't really like the way this looks. And I was like, yeah, I know, because it's not like the way he likes it. You know what I mean? But he's so fucking good that it's hard for me to look at and be like, well, you know, like I look at his stuff and go, well, I wish mine looked like that. But then a lot of people come and go, well, I wish my stuff looked like yours. And then it just goes down the line. I think if you get to the part like where you're like, well, my stuff looks good, then we should just all hang it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And there's also that whole thing of like, you know, when you look at everything as a body of work, which we used to do with our portfolios, and now it's kind of our Instagram walls in a way. You know, it's like you look at everything all at once, and you sort of start to be able to see yourself.
Oh yeah,
see your thumbprint or fingerprint or whatever. You
yeah,
know?
You can always see when somebody has like not been able to draw something or not known the subject well, and they've taken it. Like I just saw something last week on somebody's page that I was looking at that I know, and they had like just a little yokai, and their style is very graphic, and they have a lot of it's got a lot of their input into it. Like it's not very traditional, and then they did this really traditional piece, and I was like, oh yeah, like they didn't draw that because it's not at all anywhere near their style. And it's like their Instagram is amazing, and then there's this like one piece that's like so traditional, like right in the middle, you know. And I kind of sent him a joking message and was like, love the yokai, and he was like, oh, I just ripped it, you know. And I was like, yeah, I can tell, you know.
Yeah. That's
He's like, I just thought
part of it. Hey?
I couldn't make it he couldn't change it enough in the way that his graphic art style is to make it his version of it. So he just used it, which is fine. We all do, right? Like, I mean, it's all the same shit.
Yeah. And it's all part of tattooing. And actually it's also a part of the skate graphic industry has been ripping things off and barely even making it their own.
Oh my God.
Putting it out there anyway and stuff like that. It's folk art, right?
Yeah.
People like what they like.
Yeah.
But then there's you know, with the iPad artists and everything like that, they were the biggest ones who were really upset about all the AI stuff that started to emerge, because it's almost at the point now where if you're strictly a digital artist, to everyone else, it might as well just be AI because they can't tell the difference.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Just on that note, we just had I just gave someone a trial at my shop. They wanted to come work at the shop, and I kind of had a little bit of a house cleaning a couple months ago, and it just has to happen every now and then in the business, you know? And I had somebody who wanted to come in and do a trial, and they came in for a week, and our printer, something happened to our Thermofax or our printer or something. And I said, he's like to the client, he was like, well, we'll just have to book you an appointment. It was a walk-in, like a walk-in artist. And I was like, why? And I was like, why do you have to book him an appointment? And he was like, well, can't make a stack, can't make a copy, can't print it off my iPad. And I was like, so fucking hand draw it. Like make a stencil, hand draw it, make a hand stencil. And he was like mind blowing, and it became an argument with him and I just left it at that. But it sat with me. It just was a very uncomfortable place for me to sit with myself, that he couldn't make a hand stencil or couldn't hand draw it. I think maybe it's partially that we get a little spoiled because we draw so much stuff on people that there's not much that I can't draw. Like, I don't use my iPad to get stuff off Google. I just use it to draw and to not have 11 pieces of tracing paper like right here, like drawing 3 heads and like putting them on top and changing the horns or putting another piece on top, and you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, like it just is nicer just put another. It's obviously made our life a lot easier, but it was such an eye opener to the life we live in the tattoo industry now, where you can't work without your iPad. Like my client literally was his second tattoo. He was like an all-day guy. Like the artist actually got upset because he heard the client. The client said to me, "Oh, he can't work because he can't use his pen." And I was like, "Unfortunately, yeah." And he was like, "Well, that's insane." He's like, "What did they do before that?" And I go, "Well, he wasn't tattooing before that." And it just blows my mind to the people who are able to just rip something off Google, change the opacity on it, get their line draw. They don't even have to draw a line drawing. They just go in and filter out the thing and make a line drawing. It prints out the line drawing, and they just basically color by numbers, and they just copy it. And it's like blue, green. Okay, I'm going to blend this in here a little bit. Granted, like, do I think I can do a portrait that way? I don't think I can, but I don't want to, and I don't want to be a guy who copies like that. Like, do you know what I mean? At least, like, I feel like a conversation that I had with one of my artists was like, well, you copy Japanese stuff. And I was like, I do. I copy the same type of things that have been done for 100 years, the wood blocks that have been passed down, that Horiyoshi's done, and everybody's done the same thing. We've all done it. We've all done it. But those are subjects that are always the same, right? Like, there's how many ways you're going to change a koi to make it look like yours before it looks wrong or stupid? Or what are you going to do? Mix up the wrong subject? So, like, it's our art, but now you've kind of messed up the rules of Japanese stuff, so to say, by getting the seasonal stuff wrong. But it made a cool looking tattoo to somebody that they don't know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But so he was like, well, what's the big deal if I just have a stencil printed off on thing and I just copy it? And I was like, yeah, for me, it's like paint by numbers. It's just it's not wrong or right. It's different. And I just come from a different generation of that.
Yeah. And it's a standard of quality. I'm in the same boat. I'm more impressed if what somebody could pull out of their own head than how good they can be a human photocopier, because you can teach a chimpanzee to be a human photocopier.
Yes, all the time. Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Look, you can teach. I just told our apprentices, you can teach anybody. Tattooing is kind of like welding, right? Like it's just a trade. Like, you can teach somebody to tattoo. It's whether you can teach them the art part of the tattooing. Like, and I always pick through any apprentices that ever want to. I swore I wouldn't have another apprentice again just because of these people that come in, and I make them bring in like a full portfolio, paintings, drawings. Like, they can't bring me in an Instagram or all digital art. Like, I want to see stuff drawn, and I want to see them come in and draw something for me in front of me so I can see that they draw. And I just think tattooing as a whole, the way I was taught to it in the generation was, it's a technical trade, like welding or anything else. Like, you can teach anybody to put a needle in a machine. Nowadays, even easier to put it in a cartridge in a thing and just pull a line, stretch the skin, pull the line, done. Bob's your uncle, like, done. But being able to, sit down, look at it, draw it, shade it, know where the lowlights are, know where the highlights are, know how to make it look correct is a different type of deal, you know? And those people, I think, are tattooers versus the human copy machine, like you said.
Yeah, and I think if heaven forbid we ever got blown back to the Stone Ages and there was an electromagnetic pulse and we don't have iPads or the internet, I would say about 80% of people tattooing wouldn't be doing it anymore.
100% on that, for sure. For sure. God forbid their shop power, like something goes down that they can't use it.
Yeah.
Their iPad dies, their something dies, they just can't whatever, they can't draw it on, they can't just, it's just strange to me. Like, I don't know. You know, it's just a weird, I mean, I'm all for progression. I think the progression of the machine to the pen, like it took that whole thing took a big turn for me. I was very against switching to the pen, and now that I do, it's like a life changer. It saved my hands a lot, saved my body a lot. I don't know if you use pens or not, but
no.
I think it was extremely helpful for myself. I have some arthritis stuff, and so it was lighter and it was easier. It was easier to not have multiple machines laid out on my table anymore and just switching out cartridges. But I was very hesitant. I had to buy some machines from Shag Builds, who Mike we know is local here. So I got some machines. I could still use regular needles, and I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? I couldn't decide. Like I would still line with oil, and then I would use this slide rotary with regular thing. And I was like, okay, I'm using a rotary. Like I got my head around that, but I still had a clip cord and I still had all that. And Boston Rogos, who I kind of like led down the path of Japanese, who's an unreal artist. He was an art teacher and he's amazing. Like he worked at my shop for about 7 years, and he came in and switched over to pens, and he was like, dude, you got to do it. Like you got to do it. It's going to be life-saving to you. And I would watch him and I'd be like, oh God. And he would just be like, just commit to it. And I'd be like, oh, so it was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And finally I was like, okay. And I ordered the pen, I ordered a couple of cartridges, and I was like, I'm going to do one whole tattoo like this. And it's either going to look like shit or it's going to be doable. And I just took my time and I did it. And I was like, it's still just tattooing. Like it's still, I think I saw Bill Canales once say, I can tattoo with anything, any needles. Like it doesn't really matter what brand or whatever. It's just all tattooing, right? Like, and so I just kind of got my head around that. And it was just a matter of like not having that hit on the skin and the bounce back and like the feel and the listening to how my machine was working and the sound of it hitting the skin to know that was the point that I'm done and to move on and stuff like that, because you don't get any of that with that. You know?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the part that I had to kind of learn, you know?
Yeah, I've been playing around with it a little bit, but I still just use my coil machines. But I was the same way with the iPad. I was like, I'm not using the iPad ever. I'm only gonna draw. I'm only gonna draw on paper, and I'm only gonna paint. And it took me. I think I've only been using the iPad now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I was very resistant to it, but then I noticed everybody else around me was like just like taking leaping bounds. I'm like, what's going on? There must be something to this.
Yeah, I was, you know, it's funny because I took my friend over to Roper, and one of my artists wanted to get a back piece from Roper, and I haven't seen Mike in a while, and he has a private studio, no Instagram. He's very underground. He's very about the coil, like he's loyal, doesn't use, it's very set in the way he tattoos. Coil, needle bars makes it, you know what I mean? Like, and we were sitting there talking at his private studio, and my guy was there, whatever. He whips out his iPad and he starts drawing, and I was like, you motherfucker. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, he's still, and he's like, oh, I was like, you're using the iPad? And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, dude, this is so much easier. Why would I not? And I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's a time saver.
Oh.
And you can make a thumbnail just by going like that. Oh, now it's a thumbnail. Okay, I'll zoom
Yeah.
in.
I really think the ability to, I mean, doing the big stuff that you do, big stuff that I do, like I just getting people to come come back in and trace out everything on tracing paper and then hold it up and then try and size it all. Whereas now, like, not only with Procreate, but like print to size, where you can print everything and it's just like tape it all together in squares and it's just ready to go, you know? And then you go further, and like Andre Malcolm has that life-size printer.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just printing out life-size stencils.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Epson, I think.
The Epson printer, yeah. Yeah. And then he puts it on by himself, and he puts it over his head and like puts it on and lays it down, which is again mind-blowing to me, because I gotta have, like, I'm telling you, I'm the worst stencil putter on ever, and I gotta have half the shop come and help me, and can you hold this up and that up, and you know. But you're in your private studio alone, right?
Yeah, I gotta do it myself.
You suffer with that?
Especially if it's something perfectly symmetrical, like a Hanya or something. Usually I've got to put it on 3 times or more, you know, to get it centered.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky, but I think there's room. I think that part of the progression I really enjoy. Some of the other progression, not so much.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it's just, like you said, the AI stuff's going to change a lot of stuff. I just saw a whole podcast on AI and how AI stencil making and AI printing and all these AI designs, like you're going to be able to just get a printed out Japanese sleeve that's like printed out, ready to go, and someone will just tattoo it, you know, like just, so I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think the people that are doing what they're doing and the guys who really do what they do, like, they just love to do it. Like, I love to tattoo and I just love to do what I do. There's nothing that I just love to draw that stuff on and just watch it. Like, you can print it out as much as you want on a layout, on a 3-dimensional arm and whatnot. But when you're drawing stuff on and you look at it, you know, when you draw stuff and you look and you stand back and you go, no, that's not it. And you go draw it again. And you're like, okay, that's kind of it, but that's not. And then you go and change that. And then you're like, that's it. Like, I don't think there's any I don't think there's any replicating that.
No, and we're breathing our sort of life into the lines that we make. I mean, look at old Chinese painters, right? They have this thing where they emulate the masters. So, for example, tiger paintings, right? You always see the same poses of tigers, but you'll notice by different artists, because the stripes will look different and the bamboo in the corner will look different. So it's like their life that they breathed into it was how they did their brush stroke, right?
Same subjects, same dynamics,
same pose, everything.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's a personal, when you start giving it too much technology, you really take the personality and the humanality out of the piece of art. You might as well just have a machine tattoo it on you, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And on the flip side of the coin, it's making real paintings more valuable now.
Oh,
because they're tangible, and you can smell them. You can feel the paint on them and stuff like that. You know, so it's kind of made actual art, you know, almost a rarity, because everybody's.
I just saw someone selling. I love Caravaggio, like this piece right here, and over there as well. And I had somebody repaint these for me, like replicate them, and they're super good. Well, somebody that I know referred me to somebody else, and they were like, hey, I can do this for you. They were in the Netherlands, and they were like, I can do this for you. And I was like, really? They go, yeah, what we do is we print it, and we make a full print. And then we take paint and we just go over the print with the paint to give it the texture of paint. And because I was like, well, how are you selling it for like $150? Like, I want to oil, which are like a couple thousand. and replica, and he was like, oh, no. He's like, these are just prints and we just paint over the prints and then we sell them. And I was like, what a ripoff. Like, what a scam. Like, they're just get the texture of paint. So when you touch it, it feels like paint, but it's a print,
Yeah.
I'd never seen it. And I was like, wow, like that's a ripoff.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I've seen digital artists doing the same thing. They'll design everything in Photoshop. They'll print it in sepia.
Yeah.
And then they'll look at their screen for all the colors and they'll oil paint on top of it, which is a little bit more artistic, but in the end of the day, it still just looks like digital until you look up close and then you see the brush strokes. It's cool and all, but it's again, it's a bit like being a human photocopy machine, right?
I feel like that's why I don't like looking at Procreate art, like I'm modeling my whole up and I'm gutting the whole place and I bought all over, which I need to speak to you about anyway to see if you have any painting. I bought all these paintings to do a huge art, like all originals, right? Like Camden and Alex and just Roper and all those guys. But somebody was like, hey, if you want, I don't have any, I have a flash sheet that I can send you that I won't charge you. He sent me a digital file and it was all pretty, and it was like a flash sheet. And I was like, oh, he was like, just print it and you can have it. And I was like, oh God, that is so ugly. Like, create, I was like, oh God, like it's so uninteresting to me to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. It's and a lot of those guys have never picked up a real paintbrush in their lives either, and they don't know what to do if they do it. They're like, oh, what's this? But when did you open Living Canvas Tattoo?
I opened it in 1993. It was
okay.
It was oh man, like that's a whole nother thing. So Tempe, where my shop is right across from the university, Arizona State, pretty well known, big university. And Tempe, that city had never had a tattoo shop, and the other part of the valley, other tattoo shops, and was growing, and there were more shops coming, and I wanted to open a shop there, and I went and tried to, and the city said no. We're not going to have it. We don't want the undesirables. This was in 1992, 91, 92 is when this started. And they said, we don't want the undesirables. Cool. And I was like, shit, like, okay, like, I'm undesirable, but like the bikers and the whole thing like that. And then we kind of went down that path, and you have to have a use permit in Tempe, which means that they approve or disapprove your use of the business, and they know. So I said, what's it going to take? And they said, there isn't. And they said, you have to go talk to homeowners and get their approval. And so I went, and the homeowners opened, and we're right on. Not only did I want to open in Tempe, I wanted to open on the main strip, like right in the fucking middle. I just picked the worst, the most valuable place, And there's a very well-known homeowners association behind there. It's called the Ash Maple, and they kind of run the whole area. So I had to go meet with all the homeowners, and it was like 90-1 that no. And so I went back to the city, and they said, Ash Maple says no. Well, then we got a lawyer involved, and I was just like, there has to be a way around this. And we worked on it for a year with the city, like, how do we make this work? Like, we are not going to open a shop with undesirables and this and this. And we met with the homeowners, and we fought them for, like, we got turned down times. Finally, we agreed to, they gave us stipulations. You have to build a wall, big, like 8-foot wall around the shop to keep it away from everybody. We were like, we'll do that. And they said, you have to have a special trash pickup for your, we'll do that. And so we just agreed to, like, at that point, they could have told me anything and I would agree to it because I was just determined to get there. Well, we finally they made a list of like 9 criteria that we had that would be the baseline of Tempe's tattooing, because they never had a shop, they didn't know. And what I have to preface this with is, in Arizona, there's no licensing, even in this day and age. None.
Oh wow!
You don't have to have a license. You don't have to have anything. It's not governed by anything. The only thing that we have is bio pickup and bloodborne pathogens. That's it. But so there was no organization to talk to. Like, nobody cared. Like, so I was like, well, let's figure out something. And my lawyer was like, well, let's do this. Let's make it that, since we've put in over a year, it was about a year and a couple months. And I was like, well, this is going to suck, because we're going to get in and somebody's then going to come and open right next to us. I know it. So the city made a criteria that you can't open within a quarter of a mile from another shop, which was great. Like, perfect. Check off that box. Then it became, you can't open next to any homes or like residential. And we were like, perfect. Check off that box. That makes sure nobody can open around us. And then they made a whole criteria. We finally went in front of the council. We did everything and we got in. So we got in, and then we started doing business, and we took off pretty quickly. The university, like, everybody started during the year that we were trying to get in. We were on the news. We were like, there was a lot of like hype about it. So when we did get in, it was a pretty big deal, which was cool for us and gave us a lot of credibility, because people knew we worked with the city, and without regulations, we were putting in our own regulations, all the shit. Well, we were there for a couple of years, and then my good friend Sean opened close to a little bit, and then somebody else opened another. It's been 30-something years, and now what's happened is nobody's ever back. And a lot of shops tried to come and open further down on Mill, on the main hub, but they can't, because what's happened now is Mill has grown and they've built all these high rises, whereas before the neighborhood stopped at one area. Now it goes all the way down. Now nobody can open there. So it kind of like set by ourselves. So it worked in our favor, and it's been great. But yeah, it's been 32 years now.
Wow, nice one, man.
It was a lot. And I mean, the shop is beautiful. The standard is really high. We're really highly rated, and the reputation is really, really good. And we're known in the Valley here to be like a premier shop, and like have, really good, like our artists, great group of a great staff of people of every range of walking guys and fine line, and just a bit of everything. So we have a great crew, and it's an amazing shop for sure. But it's been a lot. I mean, 30-something years, same owner, same running it. I tattoo in there full time. It's good. There's a lot of in Arizona. I think I'm the oldest single owner shop in the state or in the country or something.
Oh wow!
So,
wow, that's a beautiful shop, man. I've seen the pictures there you showed me. It's absolutely gorgeous shop.
For sure. And now it's been like that for so long. I'm gutting the whole inside. So
oh wow!
I have a real estate company that I build some houses, like design and design houses and stuff. So I'm gonna gut the inside and modernize it now and kind of keep the base of it, but just make it new. It needs a refresh. So,
that's awesome.
I just signed another 10 years, so I know I'll be there another 60s, I think. Kind of scary.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. Let's see here. I got a few more questions for you. You mentioned to me that you tattooed Christian Hosoi and his dad, right?
Yeah, that was awesome for me. And just one of my between him and the tattooing Tommy Lee, tattooing Christian, like the Christian Hosoi thing, like is just a no-brainer for me, just as one of my life experiences. I just love Christian. I think he's awesome. I love the story. He went to prison. He found Jesus, and not only that, but just who he was, and larger than life. It was like a cartoon character. I mean, it was insane. Who didn't know Christian Hosoi?
exactly.
So he came in, and then Pops Asoy, his dad used to do all his graphics, you know, like, and Pops is an unreal artist. And when I was tattooing Christian, Pops, I had always heard Pops, and I had actually seen Pops when I was in California skating at Del Mar one time. Christian was there and Pops was there, and he was a lot younger, probably in his 50s something. But when he came in my shop, I was like, holy shit, fucking Pops. I think I was more shocked about Pops than Christian, to tell you the truth, because he was kind of a legend, you know, like Tony Hawk's dad was a legend as well, you know, bigger than Tony was initially, you know, because he
really,
yeah, he put on all the contests and stuff, and he was really well known.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Del Mar and stuff, he was pretty well known. Like, he was a big name around the whole community. But Pops Asoy was big, and everybody knew Pops Asoy. And when he came in, it was Christian, Pops, and Lonnie Haramoto, and they came in, and I was tattooing Christian. I just did this like cross on him, made out of like nails, like a cross, you know. Did those on him, and while I was tattooing him, his dad, like Pops, drew up this little foo dog, like in his style, and he just whipped it. He goes, "Hey, you got a pen?" And I was like, "Yeah." And all I had was like a stencil, kind of purple stencil pen for the skin, you know. And he just whipped it out, like, and he was like, "Hey, can you do this on me too?" And I was like, "Let's go."
Oh, that's wicked.
Yeah, that was. I love those guys, and now I stay in touch with him, and we talk and stuff. And it was like just one of those friendships, you know.
Oh, that's so cool.
People like very, very, you know.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, I think in the skate, for most people, somebody who worked at my shop the other day said, "Christian who?" And I was like, "Oh, unless you're into skating, you just wouldn't get it."
Yeah, it's true. And even in tattooing, you know, like non-tattooers and stuff like that, I mentioned I got my work from Philip, and like the amount of people who don't know, it's like shocking to me. It's like, well, I guess he never was on any of the reality television shows, so.
Yeah, I mean, and think of all those people that would have no idea that like that work from Philip, and they just have no idea. They're like, "Oh, is he on Ink Masters?" Like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Man, you would have no idea, like, you know.
I always tell him, no, he's the opposite of Ink Masters. He's a legend because his work speaks for itself.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it is with like Christian or the skate community. I mean, you know, as a skater, it's just what people don't know. They know, and they're so jaded by what they see on. You know, everybody knows Tony Hawk, you know, and because of he's so huge, you know.
Yeah.
When you're in the skate stuff, like there's people from the 80s that I just think are just way more instrumental to me, like, you know, that I just with that I was just are way not. I have nothing against Tony. I think he's great, but there's just people who I just look up to so much more just from life experiences with those people. Like I'm sure you are with Phil, and that kind of stuff. You know, I mean,
yeah. There's
just no duplicate those experiences. How do you duplicate experience getting tattooed by Philip Liu? I mean, it's like insane.
Yeah, exactly right. And
did you go to where did you go? Did you go out to his place?
Yeah. I went to Switzerland there. I did the.
How was that?
It was really cool. You know, I went the first time I went. It was 2009, so I was still in my 20s, and I didn't know where it was or anything. He had a shop in Lausanne still.
Yeah.
But I went to the old location of his shop in Lausanne, and it had all been torn down. And I was like, what is going on? I've come all this way and he's not here.
Yeah.
And there was a shop across the street called, what was it called? Pirate Tattoo or something like that. It was Sailor Beats tattoo shop.
Yeah.
And so I went over there and I was like, oh, I met those guys and chatted for a little bit. And then I asked him, oh, yeah, where, do you know where Philip's shop is? And he pointed me in the right direction. It was just kind of off the beaten path and in like a little, sorry?
That's what I've heard. It's just kind of off, like private, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Beats shop was called Ethno Tattoo. Thanks, Jordy. yeah, and so yeah, he showed me, and it was off the beaten path, and it was like, you know, there's like a little sticker on the door, and you couldn't see in, and it was like, oh, okay, I wonder if this is the place, and then you go in and you hear, you know, the buzz, and I saw Rinzing tattooing at the time there, and you know, I told him, oh yeah, I've come from Canada and just wanted to check out the shop, and then in walks Philip, and he's like, oh, you're lucky because normally this time of year I'm not. It was like near December or something. He's like, normally this time of year I'm not in the shop, so it's lucky you came in when you did. And you know, I didn't get tattooed from him at that point, but I did get tattooed from Rinzing, and Philip let me watch. He let me watch him working and stuff like that, so that was really cool.
Super cool. That's really cool to hear that he let you just sit there and watch. And you didn't know him?
I didn't know him. No, it was my first time ever meeting him. I don't think I'd even written him a letter or anything at that point.
That's so cool that he just let you sit and watch.
Yeah, he had done, you know, and I was trying to be respectful about it, you know, and give him his space, and he was just like, no, come closer, you know, and then he's kind of like, you know, some people come by and they come all this way and they don't even think about what questions that they want to ask, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I better think of some questions to ask him. And I came the next day as well, and I met a good friend who was also from Canada. His name's Jordy, and he was getting tattooed from Rinzing. And, you know, we're all still friends since. That was like 2009. And I went a few more times when they moved shop and everything. And, you know, I had to book an appointment. I sent him a letter. I did the old school way. I sent him a letter to try and get an appointment booked. And he accepted it. And I was like, oh, I better figure this out now and save up some money and get tattooed.
Yeah.
And I worked over in the valley in Switzerland, in Valais.
Oh, cool.
And then I worked in France before I got tattooed, just to save up a bit more money.
Tattooing?
Sorry?
Tattooing in France?
Yeah. Yeah, in Cannes.
Oh, okay, in Cannes.
And then I got I got the tattoo started, and Tatine came in, and she was asking me some questions and about art and stuff like that, and I showed her some of my paintings that I'd done just on my phone. And then she invited me. She said, next time you come up, you know, come and do some painting with us.
Oh my God. Having her come in is like having Pops come in, right?
Yes, exactly.
Same scenario. It's like Philip Liu, fucking legend. Like you expect this beam of light to come down, and then Tatine walks in and you're like, holy shit. Like it's the other half.
Yeah. So yeah, all around just amazing experience, and you know, he's known for giving you all the cheat codes, and he's always thinking about them. And I think the second time I visited him, he was mentioning something, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember you told me that before. And then he was like, oh okay, and he just stopped talking about it. And then I was like, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to let him explain it again. And but yeah, then it was neat to see the things that got repeated. I've noticed that with other old school tattooists and stuff. They have their things that they like to sort of tell everyone who's interested.
Yeah, I think that mentality is kind of very much like Roper work, very much like that, like Philip does, like just very quiet like that. But if you know him and you see him, like he'll talk to you and stuff, and kind of like that same kind of thing, you know. It's that underground legendary person that people don't know, like this wizard, like wizardly person that I mean, I have people constantly ask me all the time, like, do you know how to get a hold of Roper? And they go, yeah, I'll make a phone call. But it's the same kind of like with Philip, right? Like same kind of thing. Probably the same with Mick too, like out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Mick's even harder to get a hold of. And actually, I managed to get tattooed from Mick on my last time I was out in Switzerland.
No way.
Yeah, and it was a similar thing. Loretta gave me his contact info.
Yeah.
Because everybody was going to the London convention, and I still had a couple days left, and so I was like, okay, I'll just explore Switzerland. I'll go see Mick.
Yeah.
And I hopped on a train, and then I hopped on the bus to get up all these green big hills to get to his place.
Was that
And
after Zurich?
he's no longer in Zurich. Yeah, he's in Rohettenball. I can't remember how to pronounce
Zurich,
it.
yeah.
So, yeah, I showed up there, and he was very welcoming, and I got to watch him working for a little bit. And I asked him again, could I come watch you tomorrow? And he was totally okay with that. He was down with that, and he was going to be working on a big Foo Dog piece on the guy's on a guy's stomach, and then the guy no-showed on him. We're all just like shooting the shit about like Trailer Park Boys and Canadian stuff, and this guy no-showed.
Holy,
like, who no-shows on Mick? Like, what's going on?
like, what is wrong with you?
Right?
Oh my God.
And he's like, well, it's your lucky day. You want to go home with a souvenir? And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And he tattooed this. He drew that on and tattooed this in 2 hours. This wicked dragon head.
How long of a sitting was that for him?
2 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Dude, that thing's huge for 2 hours too.
Right? And he just drew it on, and yeah.
Yeah. Was that 2 hours plus drawing time? Or just
it might have been including the drawing time, come to think of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's elbow to wrist. I mean,
and it's a cover up. I had a thing under all this, so you covered it up.
Yeah, I mean, when you can do dragons like that, I mean, it's kind of like Bill, right? Like Bill Canales, like they just draw them on and bang them out, like just like they're just second nature. That hand and brain thing just
yeah, exactly.
Throws it out there so effortlessly.
Yeah, it was really amazing to see and to pick his brain. And I gave him a painting that I had a bunch of paintings with me, and I wanted to give him something. And
yeah,
you know, and he showed me all of his secret books and stuff that he had. And actually, he had a Mike Roper portfolio with all of this wicked work in it that I'd never seen.
I think Mick came in and stayed with Mike or something, or I know they're pretty good, pretty close.
So that was amazing.
When I see Mike stuff and Mick stuff and Philip stuff, like I just see so much of all three of them intertwined in all of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, a lot of people think that Philip came up with all that water on his own. It was actually a lot of Mick and him brainstorming to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard a lot of those stories like early on about those guys doing that stuff, like Mick and Philip working together and being around each other a lot, working like a lot of that. I think that a lot of that European stuff, you know, that style is very unique.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same as my 80s skateboarding story. Like that's my history of, that's your tattoo. Like that's the same kind of thing about me beginning to skate with those guys in the 80s. Like they're legendary, and you have like the tattoo version of the same thing. It's just a different dynamics, you know? I mean, who gets to get tattooed by Mick and goes to get to hang out with Philip, you know?
Yeah, it was pretty pinch yourself kind of moment, right? And
did you leave there with like, I don't know anything about tattooing? Or did you feel like, oh, I have way more knowledge now?
It was more like I got a fire lit under my ass, and I'm like, I got to work harder, and I was more, and every time it's contagious. His love for it is contagious. So you feel excited about tattooing.
Yeah, you can just see that across. I mean, that's been going on for so long. It's just been those guys have been in so deep for so long, and they're so encased in it that you just can't duplicate it.
Yeah, exactly. But I like to sort of put little salutes in my work for those guys, you know, not straight rip them off or anything, but like make little salutes in there to sort of, it's like skateboarding, right? Like there's only so many tricks that you can do.
Yeah.
And if you know the origins of those tricks, you also know how to do it like those guys.
Yeah.
But you can kind of do it your own way too.
Yeah.
To make your own thing. And people might think, oh, you did that. That's so cool. That's your thing. But it's like, well, no, actually, anybody who knows, they'll be like, oh, that's cool that he's paying tribute to.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that for sure. Yeah, that's iconic. Very cool.
So I try to do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? I think there's something wrong with straight up photocopying and ripping off.
Yeah. It's one of those things too, where when you see somebody who duplicates their stuff or that they've traced somebody's thing and you look at something and you go, like, I used to look at a lot of Henning stuff, and I used to love Henning stuff so much in the beginning. And before Henning's, I used to look at a lot of like Phip Buchanan stuff. Remember back in the day, like Phip was doing a lot of like Japanese, American Japanese, whatever you want to call it. And I remember seeing he did this dragon, or sorry, let me step forward. Henning had done this snake and this dragon, these two pieces, and I saw someone in Arizona who had done a piece on a leg at a convention, and I looked at it and I was like, fucking Henning piece, you just traced it. Like, it's literally a Henning piece, a tattoo that you traced. And I think once you know those artists' style and how they tattoo, and like what Bill Canales' dragon's head looked like, what Mick's dragon's head looked like, what Philip's dragon's heads look like. Everybody's dragon's heads have like this style, and then there's like the Japanese, like the one style that everybody does, right? Like the same kind of like style that's just drawn, that we all kind of can draw, you know? But when you look at a style like, and it's just very specifically somebody's view, like somebody did some finger water and they traced or they copied Philip stuff, and you're like, yeah, like nobody does finger water like that. It's just their style of doing it. And they may get like the fingers right or the waves right, but they get all the rest of the background wrong, and it looks all funky, you know, like they don't have that nice flowing long lower part of those waves that those guys do, you know? Yeah,
it's something you can't really fake. It's like, and some people get it right away, you know, after doing it 5 times, but I'm somebody who's got to do these things 100 times before it sinks in.
Yeah.
So I had to fill up sketchbooks, like, you know, until it finally sunk in. And even then I look at all those books, I'm like, oh, nope.
Oh, I used to think, I used to do all the finger water, like spiky and like pointed. And I was like, okay, I got this. And then I was like, well, that just looks fucking terrible. And then I was like, give it more fingery and like make it more curvy. And then I was like, I'd look at, again, like Henning or like Phip Buchanan back in the 90s and stuff, or like Paul Jeffries and like all the guys, like the guys at Smiling Buddha and stuff. And you'd have that like lots of blue water with the like really fluffy curly stuff, you know, and I'd be like, yeah, that's super cool. I'll just where it's like back shaded with the spots, like the splashes and stuff. And then you go, no, that doesn't work. That works once or twice, and I don't like that. And then finally you like morph your own version of a bunch of different people, and you go, yeah, I can kind of live with that. Like, I think that's like now I think I've been doing it long enough that I sit down and kind of give myself a kind of a guide. Like, I just kind of pen out where it's going to be, and then I just have this kind of like hand memory now of like how it's going to work. And then I just look at it and I go, yeah, this is okay. And I'm going to change this, and this finger needs to be longer, but it's still, I feel like, looks like my style water. I don't feel like I'm ripping it. You know, I reference stuff still. And sometimes I change it, and I'm like I saw a piece that Luke Stewart did that I was just like, holy shit. And I was like, man, that water looks insane. And I took out my iPad and I was trying to duplicate how he did it. And I was like, just can't do it. Like, you know, his water looks very much like Philip's and like ropery. It's got the long pieces with the broken, you know.
The European water.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a kickflip, right? You try to do it, and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
this is hard. And then you got to do it like 100 more times, and you're like, this is still hard. What is going
And
on?
even if you and it like, I can't do kickflip. I think I can land 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
Even I did a lot of street inverts and like we didn't really back it was like Rodney Mullen was doing all like those kind of like tricks back then. It wasn't, I was pre that era of kickflips and all that. It was like hand plants and ollies and all that kind of stuff. That was about it, like bean plants and bonelesses, street bonelesses and all the old school stuff. But when I tried to learn kickflips, I could probably land 1 out of 10. And even to this day, I can maybe land 1 out of 20. And I can do like shove-its and basic stuff like that. And I can ollie and do all that stuff. I got really bad knees now, so don't really skate that a ton anymore. Well, I don't skate like street skate like that. I'll go put on knee pads and a knee brace, have a carbon knee brace and skate like a ramp and stuff.
Nice.
But the street skating stuff, yeah, the ollie, the kickflips and all that street stuff, like watching you street skate the other day, I'm like, man, I should go out and street skate.
Well, how many times did it take you to get your front side air out?
Oh man, dude, so many slams. Like, and then it's funny because you do a front side air and you get it like below coping, and then you get it at coping, and then I'd be like, when I first learned them, I'd be like 6 inches out, and I'm like, oh, I'm out. And back then we'd have like these cameras, you'd take a picture and you'd have to go and like get it developed, and then you'd have to look and you'd be like, oh, and I'm like this far out, but I felt like I was like 6 feet out, and then you get to the point to where you do big airs, and they're really flowy, and you're like, man, I just really had no idea what I was doing when I was doing them low. Like, it's actually nothing like that. It's the whole technique of it is different. Like, everything about it is different. The takeoff is different, the landing is different, all of it, But
yeah, and it's funny, like with artwork and stuff like that, we don't have necessarily the same type of discipline that slamming gives us.
Oh yeah.
Or even with martial arts, you don't have the same discipline that getting bopped on the nose or whatever it might be, or getting choked out. It's like, okay, I better pay attention now and work hard so that doesn't happen again. We don't really have that with art.
Yep.
So we have to like...
You're allowed to make those mistakes.
They don't hurt as much.
Nobody suffers for it except maybe, unless you fuck up really bad, and then maybe the customer suffers in some way. But I think I think you could probably attest that I think we've all made some mistakes where we've been tattooing and been like, no, and then you go back and you can blacken an area or just change something, or you didn't like the line work. But skating, martial arts, any of that is very not friendly when it doesn't work. It is not your friend. Like when ho-hos from Jeff Ferris, I would do inverts and you'd have to let go. The ho-hos like the 2 hands, right? Like, and the board is on your feet, and I wanted to learn them on vert. I could do them on the street, but I couldn't, and the board would fall off and land on my fingers. Oh. And then, man, so many times. And then Steve Schneer, who was a local pro in Arizona, rest in peace, he died as well, but he used to do ho-hos on vert. I'll send you some videos. And he'd go up and do ho-hos, and then he'd go up and do an invert, put his other hands, and then he'd walk back and grab eggplant with the opposite hand and go in, and people freak out. And I used to do a lot of inverts, so I had to learn ho-hos on vert. And I can't tell you, I literally would go and skate, and then I would spend hours just trying, and I would set them up, and I would walk on the deck, go in, and I would slam, and the board would, and then I would land one, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going home. And I was just beat up. And then finally I got him, and then I fell over, and I whacked my head really hard one time, bad. And I was like, I'm done, I'm not doing them again. And I never did them again. Or like, I was just like, fuck it. Like, it just kind of scared me,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Knocked me senseless, and I was like, yeah, like I'm kind of done with it. Like, that's one trick I used to do them on the street, like as a fun street trick, and everybody loved them at all the contests. People used to, I would do them on like little quarter pipes. Like, I would go up and do them on quarter pipes,
Oh, that's
they were still super fun, but I just never did them on vert again. Like I just, after bonking myself flat, you know, that one time a little from like 12 foot and just falling over and just falling head first, I just never felt like before, and scared myself out of it, and that was it. I mean, you know how it is, like trying to pull something skateboard wise, and you're just like, oh God, like I just don't want to get hurt, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I had a freak out moment like that where I slammed on my knee one time, and it just freaked me out. The one spot where I did it, I've kind of like, it feels cursed now, and I don't want to like roll in there anymore. I was
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, there was a ramp in here in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and I was doing lean to tails, like big ones that day. I was just kind of on, like, you know, you have good skate days and bad skate days, and I was having a really good skate day. I think Kevin Staub was there, and I think Joe Johnson, who rode for Vision, was there, and there was all these pros. So I was kind of like going bigger and trying more, and I just hung up the back wheels, and I just slammed straight to flat bottom, and again tore my shoulder, like injured myself, and I wouldn't even drive down that street anymore. Like I just couldn't go anywhere near it. I just didn't want to skate. People would constantly be like, let's go skate at this ramp, and I'd be like, I'm not going there. Like I probably should have, but my anxiety would just get so bad, and I just had no desire to skate it.
Yeah, you know, I hear you. Yeah. So do you think like the discipline and the perseverance of like, man, if I can do that kind of thing, I can do anything. Do you think that translates over to the tattooing and to the discipline and art and all that kind of stuff?
With the skateboarding?
Yeah, and even like martial arts and all that kind of stuff, like just the mindset of like training.
Yeah, I think so. From skateboarding, I think the only other thing I've ever done in my life besides art consistently for years and years besides skateboarding was jujitsu. And jujitsu, you know, as a martial artist, jujitsu is such a fucking long journey. Oh my God. Like as a white belt, you know nothing. As a blue belt, you still know, and it just goes down the road. And I'm a black belt now. It's been like 16 years. Like I luckily got a black belt. Like just, I don't know if I deserve it or not, but I can have a lot of technique, and jiu-jitsu is not about the biggest, strongest, toughest guy. And before I did jiu-jitsu, I was doing Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing and stuff. And I did a lot of that, and got some concussions and got a couple of broken noses, and that was like, no, I'm just going to step away from this. And that's how I got into jiu-jitsu. But jiu-jitsu is the only thing where I took I think my upbringing as a child in a very strict boarding school led me to being very strict in my, it kind of goes down the line. It made me strict in my pursuit to be very good at skateboarding, at what I was doing, and being the best I could do at it. I hate to fail at shit. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not a person that likes to fail at stuff. If I start something, I want to finish it, and I want to be good at it. Like I started racing dirt bikes, and I got okay, but I never got really good. And I fucking was like, I just have to quit. Like I just will never, in my mind, I could see myself getting good, but I just couldn't get there, you know? And I didn't want to risk the injury, because there's always an injury that goes along with it. So I think my childhood upbringing of being in a very strict atmosphere translated to skateboarding, and I was very strict and stringent about the way I was skateboarding and how structured I was in learning tricks and getting like to where I needed to be. And then I think when I got done with skateboarding, I mean, I still skate, but I just mean like being sponsored and like skating consistently. I tore my knee and I had a knee injury, and then I transitioned later on into jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu is about having structure and showing up and training and learning techniques. And, you know, as a martial artist, like you just have to do it. Like you have to be in the mindset to do it. You have to show up, and you have to learn the techniques. And people always go, oh, how do you get a black belt in jiu-jitsu? You show up and you train. That's how you do it. Like it's 16 years. You show up, you learn techniques, you train, you get choked out a bunch, you just do what it takes. And I think that translated over to the skateboarding, translated over to the jiu-jitsu. And in the middle of both of those, they both transitioned into my tattoo career as how picky I am and how stringent I am about even from my setup, and when I set up my Mayo stand, like where my ink caps go and where my ointment goes and how I use this. And I'm very strict about, even when my apprentice like breaks me down, like everything has to be set up. My ink cap has to be, my water cup has to be in the same spot. Like I'm very regimented in that. And I think that's skateboarding, jujitsu, tattooing, and I think even with my home designs and the way I'm designing houses and the things, are just, I'm very strict and very stringent about how I do it. And I think it kind of translates across the board for my nature as an artist. Like I'm just very mental about all of it, and it has to be right. And I just won't let things not, like, I can look at things from across the room and be like, nope. And I'll go across the room and just turn something around because my OCD is just freaks me out. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think artists in general, whether it's a writer, a painter, a tattooer, a musician, like they're just weird in that way. Like just so people get strict in their mind about what they think they need to do and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And a lot of the times, a lot of things are allowed, but it's not allowed for you. Like it's not like, I don't allow myself that freedom, and maybe I should. Like I don't allow myself the freedom for my Mayo stand to look differently and be set up different than the way it is. Like I have a lot of anxiety right now about the remodel of my shop, because for 32 years, I've tattooed with my station the same exact way. Well, now I'm gutting the whole place and I'm not going to have the same setup. And I have a lot of anxiety about like, where am I going to put my Mayo stand? How's my ink going to be? Like, where am I going to, like, it's 3 decades of doing it the same way, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I think it's weird to, I think, I'm sure, as you know, as an artist, like you have this thought pattern of how things should be done and the way you want them. And other people may come in and go, no, it's fine. And you're like, no, it's not. Like, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've kind of messed with my setup a few times. The most recent one is having a movable, I can't really see it, but it's like a movable stand for my inks where I can dip just for economy of movement.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not having to go all the way over there and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's otherwise you're thinking about things too much, and you don't get to have that flow state as good anymore because you're too busy thinking and taking trips. And
like where is, like, it needs to be just like I feel like people always say, oh, somebody said to me the other day, this lady, I did a little walk-in tattoo, and she's like, do you freak out when you tattoo? I go, as a matter of fact, when I'm tattooing, it's probably the calm time I have. Like it's the time where I'm least in my mind. Like I think about literally all others, and I'm just tattooing. It's my most calm. Like I can go to work feeling like shit. Maybe I have a bit of a cold. Like I don't feel that good. And I sit down to tattoo and I just feel great while I'm tattooing, and I'm calm and I'm in it. And there's nothing like sitting down and working on a big area, and you're just in the flow and you're putting in some wash and you dip and you're in this flow, and you look and you're like, God, I just knocked out this whole section. Where'd that time? 2 hours, 3 hours later. And you just don't, it's like when you drive somewhere and you get there and you're like, I don't even remember driving here. You know, it's the same kind of thing. Like I think it's my most relaxing time.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's this weird autopilot thing that happens. And it wasn't always like that for me. The first probably 10 years of tattooing for me, I was sweating it. You know, I was like, oh, this is stressful.
Yeah, for sure. But I think going back to what we talked about the new generation, I don't think they ever get that sweating shit beginning part, because they just copy it and they just do it and then they fucking send them out the door. There's no, I think that personalness is gone. Like when we work on big stuff like you do, and you've worked around guys like Philip and Mick and stuff that understand like all this big stuff and like what it takes to do that stuff. Like there's a personal connection that happens between client to artist, and that bond. Like I always feel like after working on big pieces like that and I get done, like I just get sad, like I break up with people or something. Like it's a breakup relationship, and I hope that they just continue on with, maybe I just do a sleeve and it's just been, you know, 6-8 months, but they talk about so much stuff that we talk about, and you spend all that time with them, and then you just don't see them again, and you're like, I kind of get like, wonder what that guy's up to, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, rather than the headphone generation of tattooers.
I can't. We just had a guy try out at the shop with us a little bit ago, and he sat down to tattoo and put on his headphones, and I walked up and I tapped him. I'm like, and he's like, what? I play like an 80s kind of music throughout the shop just for the customers, not really for us, you know, just like for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 80s, sometimes it's classic rock. But it's all like low tone, like nice atmospheric, you know? But he put on the headphones and I was like, no. And he was like, what? And I was like, listen, dude, like he's probably a 5-year tattoo or 3-year tattoo. It's about 3. I said, look, somebody's paying you $150 an hour for your time. Give them fucking an hour of your time. Like, don't put your headphones on. Just literally just talk to them, like engage with them. Like, so my mentor told me one time, like, and this is so true for me. I've had tattoos from, he said, like, you can get a tattoo from somebody that's fucking amazing, from the best guy, and have the worst experience, and it was just a terrible tattoo. It can look as great as possible, but it was just a shitty experience. And then you can get a mediocre tattoo, which I have some on my legs, but the experience and who I got it from was so great that I love those tattoos so much. And I try to instill in the younger tattooers at my shop and anybody who asks me about tattooing that it's about the experience. Like, make it an experience. Give them the time that they're paying for. Don't put on your headphones. Take out your earbuds. Talk to them. Engage with them. Learn who they are. Maybe not if it's a tiny 10-minute, 5-minute, like just, but if it's something with some substance, like they're paying you for their time, let them have an experience with it, you know? But
yeah, I agree.
I think more of an old school mentality on it, but you know, I don't know.
Kind of, but at the same time, there's also the old school mentality of stab them in the leg, right? I think what you're talking about is more being patient with the person, and it's like not getting angry necessarily, because that'll affect how you're working, right? And it's like yeah, it's almost like being a bit of a doula for their pain that they're going through, helping distract them a little bit, but you're also getting to know them, like.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you been tattooing someone and they're just super struggling, and you just make conversation about something and they just get involved in that conversation, and you're just working away, and they're no longer complaining, or they're no longer saying how bad that spot was, and you've worked on it for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes and they haven't said a word, or because you've been engaged in this conversation with them this whole time, you know? And then you stop and you guys take a break and you sit back down and the conversation's no longer there, and they're like, fuck, this hurts. And you're like, and then I try and re-engage back into that mentality of like, hey, so like, let's just get back into that zone where we're just communicating and talking and moving you along, you know?
Yeah, that's how we're able to do big tattoos in a way, you know, without them tapping out and being like, I'm done, I'm not coming back ever again, because they appreciate that.
Therapy them through it, you know what I mean? And just talk and just sometimes put them in a different headspace and get their mind out of the whole like tattoo experience, especially if it's guys getting big stuff for the first time and you're just trying to line big stuff and they're just fucking dying, and you're like, dude, you can do this. Like, this is just a tattoo. Like, we can get through this. Like, you know what I mean? And like just coaching them and just being a good representative of the art and of what we do, you know? Like, I would hate to get tattooed by somebody that was fucking amazing, or was going to give me a huge tattoo that just fucking buzzed through the thing and didn't say a word to me and was like, just give me your money. Like,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Sounds horrible.
Or like, I'm not listening to your screams, I don't care.
I mean,
it's like,
down to get tattooed. I don't know if it's ever happened to you. It's never happened to me. And somebody sat down and they put their headphones on. Like, I would be like fucking God, like, this is horrible.
Yeah, I've never understood it.
No, I mean, when Kevin did my arms, like, I just picked his brain and we talked about lots of different stuff and life and all, just like, I'm just that kind of person. And I think I like those connections, you know, and I think those guys that just put their headphones on. It is, I do believe it's different maybe at a convention where if your customer was like, hey, I'm going to put my headphones on and watch a movie for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe the artist at a convention, it's loud, there's a lot going on. He goes, I'm going to put some headphones on, I'm going to work. Tap me if you need me. You know what I mean? But that's kind of different dynamics, different setup.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it is a little different. But even then, personally, I'd still want to hear like, oh, what? Oh, you need to have a break? Okay, you know.
Yeah, that's so weird to me, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you find, how do you find that private studio set up? Like just the one-on-one?
I've been liking it. Like, I don't get any walk-in traffic, so I kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit with that. But I've been doing more of the work that I've been wanting to do.
Yeah, it's it.
And I like being in a drama-free shop. You know, not that I've really had too much drama when I have worked with other shops, but I like being able to listen.
Always in any tattoo shop, you always get a little. I mean, I try and nip it in the bud the best I can at my shop, but we always end up with something at some point. Like it just happens.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's just gotten a bit harder to find people that want to, you know, work for a fair, reasonable rate without, you know, a lot of people now just want to rent a chair for like
Yeah.
$1,000 a month or something, you know, and it's like, well, I could just do a tattoo and not have to listen to your music while you're here or something, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I go through that when we try and hire. Like I'm so happy. Like I said, I had a little bit of a house cleaning at the shop. We had some drama and I just had a house cleaning and I have no problem doing that, you know, and it just has to happen at times. And I decided that I was just going to wait until I hired some people with some experience, and I hired 2 people that both have a bunch of years. One I think is 12 or 16 years of experience, is an older guy, not fully my age, and then the other guy is closer to my age as well. And it's really nice for me to have 2 older guys in the shop, because at one point I had like 4 20-year-olds. Like,
Oh, wow.
and I was like, fuck, like, although it's really good because it's close to the university and it's good, but it was just too young of a shop for me all the way around. Like, and our receptionist was young and the artists were young and everyone was young. And I just was like, fuck. Like, so I made it a point to hire 2 older, like find people that were a little bit older with more experience that understood that. The other part is my shop is really well known and it's busy all the time. And I had this kid come in with 3 years tattoo experience, and he was like we supply everything except for we supply all disposables. We just don't supply needles, ink, or any of your personals. Like if you want to use Bactine, if you want to use Saniderm, like that's yours too. But gloves, tape, tongue compressors, razors, like all disposables we supply. And glove prices are through the roof, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But he came in and he was like, what's your split? I told him the split. He was like, cool. So I'll take 70%. And I was like, bro, you have like 3 years experience and you have no clients. Like you want to take all my walk-ins, which is ridiculous. I can keep people busy all day. You're going to take all my clients. You're going to use all my supplies. Fucking it takes, you've been tattooing 3 years. You want 70%? I was like, yeah, no. And he got all butthurt. I was like, you should go open your own private studio.
Yeah.
But that's the mentality, is like, what can you do for me?
It is, yeah. Whereas it used to be like, I'm stoked to get to work and get business and.
Dude, it used to be if you could get in a shop or if you could work and if you could tattoo. I mean, back in the day, I remember making $100 was a good day. Like, and you know what I mean? Like it was just now. I mean, now people are, you know, $5,000 days. Like I just saw somebody online the other day talking. They charge $5,000 a day, and I'm like, wow, good for you. And you're ripping stuff off like whatever, like, you know. I don't know. So it's just
wild.
Different market, different generation. It's not my thing. So you know, that old theory, like there's an ass for every seat. There's going to be people that get tattooed by those people. There's going to be people that continue to get tattooed by you and me, and that are really in it for beautiful tattoos that are going to withstand the test of time and are really going to look like substantial tattoos, you know?
And they'll remember the experience because we actually talked to them.
1,000%. Exactly. I'd love to know the people that come in and get the little fine line, you know, little pin thing, if they can even remember their artist's name, you know?
Yeah.
So,
although some of those are like 4-hour tattoos too for some people, you know.
Man, that's another thing. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, is like watching people work, and you see somebody work and you're like, that's literally a 30-minute tattoo and you're 2 hours. Like, what is, I don't even know what takes that long. I just can't, but this is a constant problem that I see having people in the shop, is like, what the fuck takes that long? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, are they, I don't know if they just line and they like beep, 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 beep. I just don't know.
I don't know either. I've tried to wrap my brain around that one, because it's like, I looked at some of the stuff and like, I couldn't take that long if I stick and poked it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and then they look, and then like my rate's a little bit higher than the people in my shop, but you know, I get like this whole background done of a sleeve, and it's like 3 hours, and they're like, holy shit, it's a fucking, I can't believe it. And I'm like, dude, it's just like, I'm just tattooing. Like, I'm not rushing. It's just the time it takes. That's it, you know? Yeah. And I just think they're so used to seeing these people going so slow that what we do, it seems so fast. And you're like, that's just a normal pace for people who have that experience, I feel like.
Yeah, and it heals better on large scale because you're making less holes, you're getting more ink in there, and so that fast, solid tattooing works.
I like my theory of just like not hitting the same spot twice, just packing it and being a little bit, maybe my old schoolness comes out with my machine running a little bit harder and a little bit more aggressive, and maybe my stretch is a little, or a lot of times I'll use the old school stretch and hold from the back and just kind of pull down and stretch. And look, I by no means am the nicest tattooer as far as like being like puppy dogging your, like being like really soft on you and peppering it through. Like, I'm not nice in that way, but I also don't have people coming back for touch up and touch up. I just lay it in. It's black, solid, laid in one time. I wipe it. It's there. We move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been tattooed both ways. I'd rather have it done painful and quick than taking forever and going over again and dry wiping with a paper towel or something.
Like peppering, like I'm sure you like put, like when you put in gray, you just lay it in, like commit to it and like put it in and just build it. And they're like, and you watch people now, they're like, and they're working on the same spot. And you're like, fuck, like, I don't know, like they're barely brazing the skin, and you're like, you can only braze it like that for so long, you know? It's like, but I don't know, different techniques, I guess, different things.
Yeah, like I wonder, is it low voltage tattooing on purpose so that it takes longer so that they get more money? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I often think that too. Like, I wonder if they know that if they really took as long as it took, they'd be done in 10 minutes and it would be $80.
Because some of these people, if they had my workload, they'd be booked for like 7 months out. You know what I mean?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I hear it all the time. Like, well, somebody just said to me the other day that I just hired at the shop. He's like, I can't. There's like a huge, it's either sleeve, back piece, full leg, whatever. And I go, it's really all I know at this point. And I work 5 days a week, four or five. So sometimes, mostly 5, sometimes 4. And I come in and I work, and I just usually do 2 3-hour tattoos, 12 to 3, 3 to 6, or 3 to 5. And then that's kind of my thing. I don't really like to tattoo more than 3 hours anymore with my arthritis in my hands.
Yeah.
It's just kind of my cutoff. Like I had this long talk with Roper about this, and Mike only works for 2 hours. He just does 2 hours. That's all you get. That's it. You're done. And then he'll just.
Yeah, Philip too.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I just cut it for me. Like 3 was comfortable, and I'm like, that's it. Like it's less strained. And then I see all this stuff with amazing guys like Bill Canales, and I see like 8-hour, 9-hour session, full sleep, and I'm like, holy shit, how do they do that? Like sit for so long and just do it. Like I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I used to back in the day. I used to, when we all used to kind of hang out at the shop, and it was kind of the like clubhouse, and we all would hang out. It would be no big deal to sit and tattoo somebody for 10 hours because everyone was kind of drinking beer and just fucking hanging out and smoking cigarettes. And it was like your whole day and evening. But now it's like just different. Like I go to the shop, I leave, I come home, I have other stuff going on, and we just kind of regulate the day that way. But yeah, I think the kids, I think if they had my workload that I have, fuck, they'd be booked out super far. And I saw some, I just posted on our shop group chat the other day, a girl was like, oh, I'm booking for, I think it was like June, July, whatever. And she does like micro tattoos. And I'm like, she's booking for June and July, but she does like 2 tattoos a day. Like, what does she work 4 hours a day? Like for the whole day though? Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it's easy. I think people get really wrapped up with, I'm super booked out, or my books are open from 12 to 1 on the first of the month, and then they're closed for the year. Like, fuck off. Like, seriously, like just fucking tell people you're available. Like, I see people, when people like Bill Canales and all those guys are opening or have openings and get people in and do stuff, like come on, like, let's be real. Like, don't let your ego do it, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of a shady salesman technique where they're kind of faking the books closed thing, right?
Yeah, they think people just wait for them, and then they got to rush in, right? And then like get themselves on the book so nobody else can. And then they like to go, well, I'll read through and pick and choose the ones I want, and I'll get back to you if you fit what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I don't know, different things. I think, you know, again, ask for every seat. Not my cup of tea, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think I'll change my ways.
And a long, I think. Do you? How far? Like, what do you stay? But like, how long of a day do you work typically?
It depends. Like, I still do long sessions. Like, I'll do between 3 and 4 hour sessions typically on people. And then, you know, if they're really eager or they came from really far, maybe we'll do a 5-hour session or something like that.
Yeah, if I have someone from out of state, like I have an out of state, like a couple, some out of state, if they're coming from, I'll either do a longer session or I'll just do 2 days, like 3 or 4 hours one day, 3 or 4 hours next day, and split it up. Like, I have a really hard time with my arthritis these days, with my hands, with my rheumatoid. Like, my hands just get sore, my stretching hand gets sore, and I just don't want to give anybody less than what they deserve, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it's important for your longevity now to be doing that, because it's like what we're saying about Roper and Phillip. They're only tattooing 2 hours, but they weren't always that way. They were doing 6, 7, 8 hour days.
Yeah,
before.
Stories of Phillip tattooing for 10, 12 out 10-hour days, like just working all day.
Yeah, and I'm sure Mike Roper was the same way, you know?
Yeah, you got to maintain that longevity. I mean, I'm a 54, like, if I can get 10 more years out of tattooing, I'll be stoked. I love it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
How old are you?
44.
So you still got it. I mean, you're up there.
Yeah, I'm getting up there now, yeah.
It's all right, though. I think these are the best tattoo years as far as, like, age-wise. I don't remember who said it. I saw a podcast or somebody saying, like, you're really not a tattooer until you're in your 40s or 50s or something, 30s or 40s or 50s or something. I don't remember who said that, but somebody was like, until you've been in it a long time and you're older, you know?
I enjoy it way more now. I really do.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I
don't enjoy some shop stuff. but that's not, but that's separate from my tattooing. I enjoy my tattooing a lot more because it's a lot more calming for me because I'm not doing anything but the stuff I want to do at this point. And I have other guys in the shop also. If it's a project that I'm just not feeling, instead of having those conversations, trying to sell a client on something that I want to do, but they don't understand it, and they want like a dragon, but they want 6 toes and a spine made out of feathers and all this stuff. Like, I just don't want to do that. So I have other people in the shop now that I'm like, hey, this guy's fucking awesome. Like, go to this guy or that guy, and I'll keep it in. As long as it stays in my shop, I'm cool like that. And I'm kind of can pick and choose my projects more, which I have enough clients that I'm fine with, you know, and it's okay, you know, but I just don't, you know, a lot of the time I'll be like, I'll do the dragon for you, but let's do it like this. And I'll rough sketch something and kind of show them, or I'll show them a painting that we have and be like, the spines really look best like this, and the belly looks best like this, and try and guide them in the right way. And some people are, as you all know, I'm sure some people are super open to it, and some people are like, nope, I want like this anime thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing it. You know, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I remember back in the day when it was like I had to tattoo everything that came in the door for my biker boss, and it was like I didn't get much of a say in the matter. It was like, okay, that's what you want, sure, I'll do it up like that. And
yeah.
Now it's more like, now I feel like I'm presenting them with alternative options, and if they don't like it, then yeah, it's like, okay, I'm not your guy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have a binder of all the photos I've had that I love to show to people, my guys who work at my shop, to go, whoa, all you do is big stuff now. And I go, look at this binder. And they're all photos. They're photos when I was tattooing all through the 80s and 90s. And it's a bit of everything: Celtic, tribal, colored tribal, like Taz's, like everything. And I'm like, goofy looking dragons, like koi dragons with giant eyes and weird things. And I was like, I just used to tattoo everything that came through the door. I didn't care. You literally, if I didn't, I was screamed at. And multiple times I turned people away for stuff, and I had to pay the shop for what that tattoo would have been.
Wow.
Yeah.
Different times. Hey.
Yeah. I've had people at my shop where they've told people, yeah, like, we don't have time to do it because they haven't done it, and people have left without booking an appointment, whatever, and I've passed that on and I've made them pay the shop. I've been like, look, it was a walk-in, which is basically, because it's my shop, was my clients, like my shop client. You work in the shop, you turned it away, you said you don't have time for whatever fucking reason. You said that when your books are wide open and you're a walking guy.
Yeah.
You'd rather eat your lunch, or you're just bored, or you've done 8 tattoos today and you just don't want to do another one, and it's 6 o'clock at night and you're just fucking over it today, and you turned them away. And that might be fine for you, but it's not fine for me, you know?
Yeah. You got to lay down the law, right?
I pass that on. Like, I've made people pay that before. No.
Yeah.
It's only happened a couple of times, and it was when it was really blatant that the customer had a design, we knew the cost of it, the receptionist said, hey, this person told this person that he couldn't do it. And I was like, you were wide open, you could do it, and you just didn't want to for whatever reason, you know?
Yeah, I guess in a way it's kind of like, oh, what? That's not, this golden opportunity for you to do this thing is not good enough for you, and you're turning it away because you think you're above it? Like, wow, you know?
One of the downsides to a shop that's as busy as mine, which is constant, like, we don't really have a downtime. We don't have a slow season. Like, we're busy all the time. Our slow days are busy to most shops. Like, and I think the downside is we do get artists. We've had artists. We don't have any at this time, but we have had artists that they're $1,000 into the day and they're like, fuck it. I've literally heard them say it to me, like, just give it to somebody else. I've made $1,000. I'm good. Like, and they're like, well, there'll be more tomorrow. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, why do you need to do another one? Like, it's just, and it's a different market. Like, with the walk-in guys, they don't have any clients. So they're walk-in artists. They're usually a little bit like less years experience, and they're just there to do walk-ins, you know? And I always tell them, like, You can turn all the ones you want away when they come to you and they ask you for their work and they message you directly. But when they come into my shop and you're a walk-in guy here, you do walk-ins. That's what you do. You know.
Yeah, that's the service end of tattooing that people forget about. We're also a service.
Yeah, 100%. There's no reason to. I mean, go grab one of the other 6 artists and give it to one of them. But don't tell people just to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know. So yeah, it is what it is.
So what's your future plans besides the renos there? You got any book kind of projects or anything coming up?
Long term or just in the near future?
Both.
I got the reno thing going on. That's gonna probably take 3.5 weeks or so. That's like near future. Been trying to get a couple of house projects to work on, like some design and architecture stuff. I'm really like, that's kind of what I was going to go to school for. If I wouldn't have been a tattooer, I would have been like a designer and an architect. That was going to be my path until I figured out tattooing like a designer and an architect. So, but the real estate market is so bad right now. We used to be able to buy properties pretty easily out here and be able to redesign them and flip them and whatnot, but the market's bad. So yeah, right now, just I'm gonna try to paint more. That's on my agenda. Just do more paintings. I'm took a bunch of time off from painting and just was trying to build up, like just working. Had some family stuff going on and was just working and dealing with some stuff. And then just try and paint more and be a little bit more active and just just kind of get on with life, you know.
For sure, man.
What about you up there in Canada? What's the weather?
Raining right now, and apparently it's gonna snow. We're gonna get snow in March. Like,
shit,
I don't get it. Yeah, we've been.
We were warm today, like 75 down here today.
Nice.
Yeah,
I envy that for being able to go outside and do stuff.
Yeah. What do you have planned? You just gonna stay private student? Like you just gonna stay? You got your clients booked? You're good.
I've got a few other things on the go though. Like I've sort of dived both feet into the graphics kind of scene with skateboarding.
Oh, I saw on your page some of those stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of creating more. Like I've done comics my whole life and stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to start putting comics in with my skateboard designs and stuff like that. And you know, it's a great big the skate shops is a great big gallery, and I kind of like that. And it's still one of those industries where its roots are in rebellion, you know, and I kind of like that as well.
Yeah, I see a lot of that on your art when you and I first started talking. Like a lot of your art is very skate animated style art for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to like get back to the roots of all that stuff, and you know, like kind of like what Grimes been doing for a while there. You know what I mean? He's blending all of that stuff really perfectly. I really like that.
Yeah, he's from around here too. He's from here. I used to work at a shop that myself and Corey Adams put together. It was Grime and Roper and all those guys.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's from Arizona too.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. All those guys. There's like, his artwork same. It has same kind of feel like yours as well. That same kind of graphic style is very cool.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm thinking a few book projects and things like that for passive income in case I ever lose the use of my hands or something one day, or you know,
written books or tattoo books.
I think a little of both. Just art books and stuff like that. I've got so many sketchbooks that I'd like to put some things together, and you know,
I'm gonna have to pick the brain. One of my artists. Like a loose sketchbook out of just and take all these drawings. They're all just lines that I just from over the years just always had tracing paper line drawings, and I just want to take them and compress them all and just make a book of all, like I'll just koi and then dragon, food dog, tiger, like I'll just like botan, like just different sections, and I'll just like make a little book out, multiple, like 2 or 3 books of just all of it, you know.
Yeah, that would be so sick.
And just loose, like just messy kind of. It doesn't have to be put together well. Like Aaron Coleman does that all the time. It just makes those books, you know.
Yeah, Eddie Deutsch just put out a book kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And yeah, I think people would really, really like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did a little bit with Tattoo Life as well.
Joshua Ross, I don't know, like I got a book from him, and it's just a cool book of all his, maybe probably not all, but just a shitload of his drawings just photocopied onto pages, and there may be like a skull and a fucking food dog head and a tiger body and with no head, and they're just like sketches of everything, and they're just hundreds of pages of it. I just constantly am looking. There just might be a traditional rose in a fucking pagoda or something. I don't know. They're just all over the page, like sometimes overlapped. It's messy, you know. It's just a ring thing, but it's super cool for just like if I want to reference something quickly, I'll just sometimes flip through and go, oh cool, here's a different perspective on a chrysanthemum that I've not seen, or you know.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, man. I guess that wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the conversation. It's always nice to have a chat and reach out to talk to other people in the community and people of your experience and what you're doing and what we're all trying to do, right?
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you very much for all your time doing this.
Yeah, you got to come out and come skate.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Down this way, you got to come skate. I'll take you all the good skate spots in Arizona. There's some good stuff. And there's tons of like really cool mini ramps now. The same group of guys that I skated with over the years, the AZPX guys. These guys they're all in their 40s and 50s. Like there's a bunch of mini ramps, and we all go skate those mini ramps and stuff. And it's just super fun. There's no egos. It's just super fun.
Oh, that'd be so wicked. And likewise, if you ever come up towards Vancouver, hit me up.
1,000%. I'm gonna have to come get tattooed now. I'm gonna have to call you and book it.
Right.
For sure.
Done. Have yourself a good one, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
To you soon.
See you later.
Yep. Take care.